Good evening. Meeting will come to order. Our final night of our departmental budget hearings, and we will have our city and elected officials present tonight. You have myself, Councilman TJ Clerk, and our Assistant Majority Leader, John Gale, and our other members will be coming. And so we are here to have before us our first presenter, the Office of Corporation Counsel. I'm glad to see our Corporation Counsel, Mr. Howard Rifkin, as well as the Deputy Corporation Counsel, Alexandra Lombardi. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope all members receive the slide presentation, but it'll be up here. I also want to acknowledge members of the Corporation Counsel behind me and appreciate their attending this hearing. So obviously what we try to do in the Corporation Counsel's office is to provide the city, all of the elected officials, appointed officials, departments, boards, and commissions with the very best legal counsel and assistance that we can provide. That's our mission, and we believe that it's not only a worthy mission, but one that we're able to deliver on a day-to-day basis. Just simply put, we have a small organization. At the moment, we have 14 filled positions. I would only comment that in FY16, as I began this journey, we had 19 full-time equivalent positions. I'll spend just a couple minutes on this slide highlighting some, but certainly not all of what I think are some of our accomplishments and the highlights from fiscal year 2018. First, it's important to note that we're managing over 1,500 active cases. That includes cases on behalf of the Board of Education, for which we provide legal services. And of those active cases, about 250 are tax appeals from the 2000. I'll wait for the ATV to go by. 2016 grand list. I'm particularly pleased with our ability to have negotiated some settlements of long-standing, outstanding cases, including Serrano versus Gator, the Relocation Assistance Act litigation that actually began before Attorney Damar Osborne was born. I'll let that sink in. In addition, under the Relocation Assistance Program, there are 87 liens that have been filed, totaling $714,000 on properties under that program. I would note, it's not on the slide, but from July 1st, 2014 to June 2017, we collected about $292,000. From just July 1st of last year through the present, we've already collected close to $280,000, actually a little more than $280,000 on the liens, which I would just comment, part of our not only settlement of Serrano, but our recommitment to how we manage the Relocation Assistance Program is to be far more aggressive on recouping money where we can through the lien process. We're involved, as all of you know, drafting and supporting your work in drafting both resolutions and ordinances. A pretty complicated ordinance that you all adopted this past year is the one regulating pregnancy services centers. We've also been very actively engaged in the negotiation process of collective bargaining agreements, and this is sort of news, but we're winding down the civil litigation around Dillon 1, not to be confused with the Dillon 2 program. And as you know, The city lost somewhere north of 900,000 in what we allege to be fraudulent activities on the part of the defendants. We will have recovered, as this case winds down and is withdrawn, about 500,000, a little more than 500,000 of that 900,000, which I think is pretty good. And on the criminal side, there are restitution orders that will be issued against both Mr. Duckett and Mr. Anderson, but quite frankly, I'm not confident that we're going to recover very much money in the foreseeable or future, or maybe forever. Some of our strategic initiatives is try to maximize the cost effectiveness of our legal representation on behalf of the city by trying to balance an appropriate, create an appropriate balance between what we do in-house and what we do with outside counsel. Continuing to work with the Director of Finance and the Tax Collector to increase efforts on our collection activities, support the Department of Development Services and Health and Human Services in the enforcement of the City Housing Code and the Health Code. I know we've had many conversations with Councilman Clerk about the conditions of the Clay Arsenal properties under Amin Holdings, and part of the strategy is to really be much more aggressive in levying fines and collecting on those fines. I'm very pleased that we have now a 501c3, a Hartford land bank, that was created a little more than a year ago, which will be capitalized, and we're in final negotiations with the Department of Housing, which will be capitalized with $5 million in funds, and that I think will afford the city, through its anti-blight initiative, to be much more aggressive in taking properties, trying to rehabilitate them and bring them back online, and do it in a very strategic block-by-block way. And then finally, we negotiated a settlement agreement with the Justice Department. Attorney Lombardi took the lead on that. It's very comprehensive, and there is a lot of work to do over the next several years in implementing the commitments that we made to make the city and all its public facilities ADA compliant. Our mandates as Corporation Counsel are obviously to protect the city's interests in litigation and sometimes affirmatively engage in litigation, provide advice and counsel to this body, to the mayor, to boards and commissions and departments of the city of Hartford, engaged in negotiations on commercial and real estate transactions. I didn't mention in a previous slide the fact that we spent a lot of time and effort renegotiating the lease for Constitution Plaza, which is saving the city hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've got that right. 1.4 million over the term of the lease. We do a form and legality review of any legal documents that get signed in the city, including obviously contracts, and are involved in compliance and enforcement on matters that I just discussed, like leaning properties for blight, et cetera. So when you boil all of that down, the bargain that we provide is that we're doing this lean and mean. Our operating fund budget from 2018 adopted, excuse me, to 2019 recommended is a decrease of 4.4%. That's largely, it's attributable really to the fact that, as you know, since we really don't have CIP fund from bond proceeds, we're now moving to pay-as-you-go. There were a number of positions that previously had been paid for out of CIP funds in this budget before you. All of those positions are being transferred to the general fund. In our case, we said just, reduce our budget by that amount of money. So with that, I'll say thank you and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. One quick question. Regarding outside counsel Greenberg,
Yeah.
are they still on retainer for the city?
Councilman Clark, they are. However, the last monthly bill that I just paid was down to $8,000.
Okay, and
So we have them on retainer. I think it's important, particularly in light of some of the machinations that are going on with stuff at the legislature about trying to claw back contract assistance dollars. So we have them on retainer, but basically they're not currently doing very much work.
Okay, and I forgot, what was the budgeted amount for them, if there was any?
There was no budget
Okay.
amount. It was an hourly rate.
All right, thank you. That concludes my questions. I open it up to my council colleagues. Councilwoman Jennings? You all set? Oh, Councilman Gale?
It's got to wind up. Thank you very much for the presentation this evening, and good to see so much of your staff. So a couple of questions. With respect to tax liens, I know that when I first got here, we were selling $4 to $5 million a year of tax liens to outside agencies who were then collecting the money and foreclosing. And there's been a lot of resistance to selling these tax liens, certainly from members of the community who were most affected. And I understand that we've continued to reduce that number, and it may be down this year very little. I don't recall if it's at $1 million or less at this point. But I'm wondering, does this mean that we are taking in-house now are we doing this work in-house with your office, and we're now collecting on our own tax liens?
Two things. One is, you're absolutely correct, Councilman Gale. We've substantially reduced the reliance on tax lien sales. Melissa McCaw just reminded me, for the budget that you're considering, there are no tax lien sales, no new sales that are contemplated. And I think this current year, it's about $1.7 million. And that's down from when Mayor Bronin first came into office. I think we were at $5 or $6 million of tax lien sales. Now, so the answer, so there has been a reduction, and yes, as a matter of policy, we need to think about how we're going to be engaging and using our legal resources to collect taxes. There was a letter, as you and I have spoken about, that went out, I think, either this week or last week, to the top delinquent property tax payers in the city, both residential and commercial, that advised them that their taxes might be subject to a tax deed sale. We have not done that. And advised them to get ye to the tax collector's office and try to make a plan. So I think that there's some shift in that regard. And so, yes, it will be, some of that will be done more in-house.
Not to pick on DeMar, but there's another case I'm familiar with that's been kicking around since before he was born, that involves the Registrar of Voters' Office with I believe it's a federal court judgment that requires continuous supervision of our voter canvassing process. And I don't know if your office has had an opportunity to look at that recently. I believe the case is probably close to 40 years old. I don't know to what extent it requires us to do things that other municipalities don't do and that might be ineffective in any event. And clearly, if it's requiring us to do positive things, I'm sure we would all continue to do it. But it does seem to me it's something that should be periodically looked at to see if there's any cause to go back to federal court and say, okay, we've done it for 40 years now. How about freedom from this?
We'll look into that and get back to you, and I'll have Attorney Osborne do a genealogy report on the case. I would say that, I just remind you that after the 2014 election, the Secretary of the State appointed a monitor to work with the Registrar of Voters Office in developing better practices or best practices in the process. That person is no longer here, so I don't know whether that has anything to do with the case you're talking about. I just don't know. We'll find out and get back to you.
Well, Registrar's office would be happy to fill you in on the court case. I think they reference it in their budget presentation as one of the mandates that they have to follow. I'm wondering what your, we've had this ongoing issue over the last couple of years that's been driving a lot of residents crazy with the ATVs and the destruction of quality of life. And I know we went up to the legislature and asked to have some of these laws strengthened. And I'm wondering, how does that, or does that at all impact anything going on in your office? Have we revised our practices within the city to take advantage of whatever state legislation has been passed?
I do know that our office was involved in Councilman Concepcion's ATV working group or task force, and I'll have to go back and refresh my recollection about what emerged from that. I think that what you saw a few weeks ago with the cooperative effort that was launched, in fact, multi-state effort that was launched to do an operation to try to get these ATVs under control, is talking to Chief Rosado seems to be the most effective way. And I believe that there is a commitment to continue to try to do that periodically and put owners of ATVs, and particularly people who are driving trucks into the city of Hartford filled with ATVs, knowing that if we can find a way to gain possession of those ATVs, we will act accordingly.
If I can just add to that, the ATV task force was transferred over to the Public Safety Committee, and out of that, there was a resolution and then subsequently an ordinance that I worked with Lisa Silvestri and Alexandria on to develop those policies, the recommendation of the policies from the task force into the ordinance, which we actually looked at. Was it Bridgeport? I think it was Bridgeport. One,
It was Bridgeport.
yeah. So ultimately, as Attorney Rifkin said, what came out of the task force ordinance is now in implementation to the police department.
What I'm particularly interested in is the forfeiture and impoundment sanctions that may now be authorized by the state, and I'm not clear as to whether those are then mechanisms that the city enforces or the state enforces. I just certainly want to make sure that we're taking advantage of as much as we possibly can there.
As far as I know, they haven't given us the permission yet. They haven't changed the state statute to allow the municipality to do so, correct?
I think that's correct.
But there is the ability for the state to do it. As part of a court process, to have your
Yes,
vehicle.
I mean, I'm trying to remember, there was a bill before the legislature last year. I do not believe, Councilman Clerk would know better than I do not believe that it passed.
It did not. That was something that Representative Arce was trying to push, that they had some movement, but ultimately that did not move forward.
Okay, well, not to belabor it, but, you know, clearly to whatever extent that your office can be helpful, we'd love to put some more teeth into these things, and I will just extend that and say that I personally, and I would suspect that I would have a lot of support from council colleagues, would like to see us take some of that same, those same type statutes and sanctions and extend them to the people who are illegally dumping, so that we go to the legislature and seek authorization. If you're caught illegally dumping in Hartford, whether maybe it's your second time, there's the ability to impound your truck, and your third time, you lose it. That sounds like it would send a really strong message
I
to
think-
contractors, especially guys who rely on their truck.
Well, I mean, I think it's clear that both this council and the mayor have been very active both on ATV issues as well as illegal dumping, as again, we saw essentially a sting operation occur around that a couple of weeks ago. We're happy to sit down with whomever and take a look at the underlying state statutes, and perhaps there are legislative changes that should be made in the Assembly of 2019.
Okay, thanks very much.
Councilwoman Winch?
Yeah, I want to apologize for my tardiness. I think I walked in right at a good point when we were talking about tax collection and tax liens. And correct me if I'm wrong, I hear that we're no longer going to be doing the tax lien sales.
That's correct.
All right, we still contracting with TaxServe to collect our taxes. And we still have our tax office open part-time.
Full-time, but under
It's going to be open full-time now?
The schedule since the adjustments that were made in the fiscal 17 budget has not changed. I wouldn't call that as part-time, but yes, there are certain days where the office closes, at 2:30 approximately. And if you recall, when Finance Director Rawls presented, it was her assessment as well as the tax collector's assessment that that arrangement is allowing the department to be more responsive to inquiries. So in addition to the walk-ins, they get quite a bit of volume of voicemails. And when the office was open from 8:30 to 4:30, the staff did not have time to return phone calls, so they were not really responding in a timely fashion. So the days when the office closes at 2:30, it gives them a block of time to entirely focus on responding to voicemails. In addition, we've worked with MHAS to ensure that voicemails get transcribed into email, so they don't literally have to listen to the voicemails. They look at the emails, and the tax collector delegates them to her staff. So while it sometimes probably creates challenges for the public, it also provides some benefits in that the department is actually responding to emails and voicemail inquiries in a more timely fashion.
But it sounds like an office management problem, because if I have 5 employees, so while one person is answering the voicemails, the other person can still be collecting taxes, and when they're done with their voicemails, another person can check their voicemail, and they can continue to collect the taxes throughout the day. The problem is with the hours that we're open, if people aren't able to get in the office before they go to work, and then they can't get in the office during the lunchtime, they also can't get in there after work. So if we're gonna be open certain part of the day, maybe it should be 12 to 6 or 11 to 6 or something, so that people could, if we're we have a revenue shortage, and this is one of the ways that the city collects funds, and I just don't see that we're providing a service to the multitude by having being closed on those hours.
Councilwoman, I'll just say that the switch in tax hours, when that was done, it was done as part of a memorandum with unionized employees. And so it's not something that management can just switch unilaterally. So that would have to be done in conjunction with some discussions with
But are
unions.
these our employees?
City
Or
employees.
these are our employees, or is it a contract that we have with a organization?
No, ma'am, these
Or
are city
these
employees.
City employees?
City employees, yes.
All right, because I was under the impression that it was a consulting service that we had that were collecting our taxes.
Can I just respond to that?
Yes,
So in terms of the hours that we offer, those are city staff that are employed by the city of Hartford. They're union employees. So in terms of recommending accounts that have large receivable balances where our typical collection practices like delinquent statements and demand letters are not effective, then we will refer them out to a collection agency. But in terms of our staffing model and the hours we offer, those are city union employees. We have to be very mindful of a couple of things, and I certainly respect your commentary. If we wanted to expand the hours, we would have to increase staff. We had to adjust the hours when we had to implement a number of layoffs. The other thing that's very important is that we need to maintain internal controls. So there has to be a certain number of staff that are actually collecting monies and recording and that sort of thing. So, you know, we can always entertain changes in hours, but there's a cost that goes along with that. And the city would have to be in the position to
How
do
much are we paying for the contract with TaxServe to collect back taxes?
I'd be happy to provide that information to you
Yeah,
as a
'cause that
follow-up
sounds like
matter.
some employees, some Hartford resident employee salaries right there.
So we could do that analysis for you, but certainly
All right.
respect your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Minority Leader?
Thank you, and apologize for my tardiness as well. My question, so at this time, there are no more boards and commissions assistance from your department, which is understandable. And then in reference to commercial and real estate assistance and reviewing documents of contractual documents, or was wondering if there had been an analysis either most recently or in the past in reference to properties that could be, that are not currently on the books, that could be placed on the books, and specifically I'm thinking about the development in the river. And so if there was anything that had been done through Corporation Counsel's office in reference to an analysis of that sort.
Councilwoman Bermudez, I'm not aware of anything. We're certainly happy to work with whomever. It sounds like a housing department initiative or issue, but we're happy to work with them however we can provide legal guidance and support.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question was, from time to time, we're called into executive session for various types of settlements that occur. And so was wondering how much of the overall budget is designated to that category?
So historically, and that you'll find that in the sundry part of the budget, so all in for 19, I believe the recommendation is about 2.9, a little more than 2.9 million for both outside counsel and for settlements. But I would say that looking at it over the last few years, I would say that generally, except in extraordinary circumstances, it's about $1 million a year in settlements, maybe a little less. This current fiscal year is an anomaly because of the Serrano case, in which we'll be setting up a fund for individuals to make claims against of about 2.75 million. But that's really, sort of extraordinary and not usual. So I'd say about $1 million.
And is that about $1 million? And so is that typically would be projected for the next coming years? Is that the set cap? Has it changed in reference to the MARB?
No, it hasn't changed in reference to the MARB, and it really is a calculation that our office does in part looking at what's proceeding through the process and where we think various cases are and whether either it might go to trial where there's a verdict or we're in some form of potential settlement negotiation. So I can't say that there's any real science to it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Jennings.
Thank you. Through the chair. Attorney Rifkin, how much do we spend on outside counsel a year?
Well, I would say on average, over the last number of years, somewhere between $1.5 to $1.8 million. Again, this current fiscal year is an anomaly for two reasons. One is the retention of Greenberg trout rig, and
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
this year is an outlier because of the retention of Greenberg trout rig to represent us in restructuring. And as part of that agreement, we also hired a financial advisor, TRS Advisors, who I know that all of you have met with periodically. And our outside counsel costs have also increased in large measure because of our litigation around the stadium.
All right, through you, Mr. Chair. What is the process required what process do we engage in order to hire outside counsel?
There is no formal procurement process. Councilwoman Jennings, we are by ordinance exempted from the procurement process. I think that's in part a practical solution to the problem we are often confronted with is if somebody files a complaint, we have to make an immediate decision about whether to try to litigate that internally or hire outside counsel. So there's not a lot of time for a process. I would say that since I've become corporation counsel, we have mostly used firms that have a long track record with the city of Hartford. Fees have been negotiated in a way that is far less, 25% or more less than what any of these firms would charge non-municipal clients. With respect to, for example, the decision to hire Greenberg trout rig, we did a little bit of, not a formal RFP, but we interviewed about 6 firms in that. Recently, we did an RFP for counsel to, if on a case-by-case basis, work with the Ethics Commission on complaints. But generally speaking, since I've been counsel, we have largely relied on counsel that the city has used for a while.
Through you again, Mr. Chair. So, outside of the very specialty firms that we have to have, about how many of them would be generalists that we would hire that most attorneys could handle?
I would say very few. Most of this, for example, if we were talking about generalists, we might be talking about slip and fall cases. And the fact is that the slip and fall cases we handle internally. So I have to go back and look at it, but I was trying to look at it earlier. And I would say that our decision to hire outside counsel is informed by the complexity of the case, and the expertise that can be brought to that. But also, there are occasions where, for example, if there is a civil rights claim against an officer of the Hartford Police Department, our city, we will represent the city and hire counsel to represent the police officer, or in some instances, officers, because there is not necessarily an alignment of interest.
All right, through you again, Mr. Chair. How many of the firms that we hire are Hartford-based firms?
I would say, and don't hold me to this, and I'll get you some statistics, but I would say well over half are Hartford-based firms.
And how many would be African-American, Latino, and other minority groups?
There is one firm who's the principal in the firm is African-American.
Which firm is that?
Crombie
I'm sorry?
Law
Okay.
Group.
So there's one out of how many that we hire?
I can't remember the total number of outside firms. I think maybe 20, 25 firms.
All right, is there any attempt or any plan, are there any plans to hire, to increase the number of African Americans and Latino firms that are hired by the city? Reason being, there are a lot of complaints from local attorneys that they're being cut out of the process, they're not being invited, they're not involved in the process. So is there a reason for why so many African American and Latino firms are not included in the process?
Councilman Jennings, I've been now corporation counsel going into my third year. I have never had a conversation, and nobody has ever approached me about a desire to do legal work on behalf of the city. I am always open and willing to have those conversations. I've been approached by one lawyer whose firm is in Fairfield. And so I would, if there are individual attorneys or firms that are complaining to you that they don't have an opportunity to do legal work for the city, it's not something that my office has ignored because we don't know about it. So I would invite, I would invite anybody to call me. We'll sit down and have a conversation. And if there are opportunities for my office to provide them with some legal work, I am more than prepared and happy to do that.
All right, and would they, how would they know about work that is being done by the city, or when outside contractors are being hired?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the firms that we may be talking about are on the other side suing the city. So, I mean, if you're in general practice in Hartford, I think it would be generally known that the Corporation Counsel's office exists, that we represent the city on a multitude of various matters of litigation, or for that matter, contract negotiations, et cetera. So I'm not, if you're asking me whether I have done anything since being Corporation Counsel to affirmatively do anything to bid out business, I have not.
Okay. So if someone were interested, then we would refer them to you?
Yes.
Okay. One more question through you, Mr. Chair. Have we ever engaged in suing on behalf of the city for violation of the environmental justice laws that are currently embodied in state statute?
I don't know the answer to that historically since my tenure, no.
All right, but in the event that there was an issue around environmental justice, like because the municipal solid waste plan is coming up, Corporation Counsel would be the entity that would be looking out for our legal rights?
We are more than happy and eager to look for ways in which we can be engaged in lawsuits that could change public policy, change the quality of people's lives, and so totally open to any kind of conversation that anybody wants to have with us about opportunities for Hartford to be part of a lawsuit. I will say that we are in the middle of, on a different subject, looking to join a class action fighting the Bush administration, the Trump administration on their plans to roll back the teenage pregnancy grant. As an example of trying to be affirmative in our approach.
My last statement on this. Yesterday, we talked about the fact that there are numerous lawsuits for young women who have taken birth control and are now having heart attacks or adverse impacts from those medications. There are currently lawsuits. Is there an opportunity for the city to involve themselves, similar to when Blumenthal got the tobacco industry?
Right.
Is there a possibility, because so many of our young women are affected, for us as a city to go in on some of these lawsuits that they advertise on TV?
I don't know. I can't answer that. We'd be happy to look at it. I would also add that we've been approached by at least 6 law firms to try to induce us or get us to sign up on litigation involving opioid addiction. And we currently have that under active evaluation as to whether or not the city should join one of those lawsuits. There are numerous Connecticut municipalities that have. I think that there are some issues there about, what is the level of damages that have been suffered from the city, by the city, but we are also actively looking at that as well.
Thank you, Councilwoman Winch, and then Councilwoman Bermudez.
I had 2 other questions, but then Councilwoman Jennings made me redirect. I'll send the other original 2 questions to you in writing. But now I want to first make a comment and then ask a question. That a lot of times residents will say things to us that they won't say things to the staff because we work directly for the voters. So they will come to us and say things that you might not hear of. My question is it a common practice to follow the recommendations of the councils that we hire?
I'm not sure that I followed the question. I apologize. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, if you hire a council, a firm, to perform a certain action, is it a common practice of the city to follow those recommendations?
I'm sorry, the recommendations of...
Of the council that we hire?
Yeah, I mean, in some instances, we've hired the firm and hired their legal expertise, and they make a recommendation about what course should be followed in terms of litigation. I mean, in a lot of, so yes, I mean, I would say generally, to the extent that there is a need for the city to make a decision, I can't say at every instances, there's sometimes pushback, I guess, but in most instances, the answer is yes.
And then what's the average cost of that type of counsel? Like, what does the city normally pay for those type of counsels for, I don't know, management, personnel, confrontational situations that we pay for? What's the average cost that we pay out for that?
Well, an hourly, are you asking about a rate for a labor and employment type of attorney? You're saying personnel?
Well, if it takes them to have to go out and get affidavits, do investigations, and then come up with a recommendation to the city of certain action, what's the average that we pay for that type of service?
So it certainly depends. Sometimes investigations are undertaken in-house, so long as there's not a conflict. It also depends on the complexity of any given investigation. Some don't take many hours for an outside investigator to complete, so it's hard for me to say, as I sit here now, on average, what that costs. But as Attorney Rifkin mentioned earlier, we are very aggressive in negotiating rates anytime we have to go to outside counsel to perform an investigation or to represent us in any type of litigation, including labor and employment. And so we get whatever hourly rate, the best hourly rate that we possibly can.
Okay, I'm not an attorney, but I do
Sure.
understand that this is a budget process.
Yep.
And this is a number question.
Yep.
So if you have to go back to your office and determine
Absolutely.
what's the least amount that you pay to the most amount that you pay,
Yep.
to come with an average amount that you pay, I'll be happy to receive that in writing.
We'd be happy to get that for you,
Well,
absolutely.
All right.
Yeah,
And
I
my-
think, Councilwoman Winch, I think it was before you came into the room, I was being asked about total costs of outside counsel representation, and I would say on average over the years, it's between $1.5 and $1.8 million.
But those are
total.
cases, but I'm not talking about cases that you have to go to court for. I'm talking about
Well,
when you,
this could be outside counsel for
Awesome.
litigation and non-litigation.
okay.
This is just outside counsel, including, expertise for somebody who's doing a set of negotiations on behalf of the city in a labor contract.
But that's
Or-
the total amount that you would pay,
This is
right?
to-
That's not
this-
the average of what you would pay to a firm. That's the total
Right,
amount
and,
that you.
again, it depends on the nature of the case, the expertise necessary of the outside counsel that we're hiring. But as Attorney Lombardi said, we try to be mindful of the fact that every dollar counts and that we insist on getting rates, hourly rates of both general partners, associates, paralegals that are less than what they could demand or command in
Okay,
the private sector.
having all that understood, I still contend that my question is a number response. So I'd like to get a number, whatever that number is, I'd like for that to be a number response. You can get back to me later, you don't have to
please.
do it right now.
Yeah,
You
let's-
know, for the
let's-
essence
let's
of
move
time.
on.
Okay.
You don't have to do it.
Okay,
My other
we'll have to
question-
I have to get clarification in my mind
Yeah,
about
no,
exactly what you're
you could get
looking
it back
for.
to me, you can get it back to me.
Okay.
My other question is, for the elderly program, I think it expires on the 15th, right? May 15th for the elderly, for the tax relief program. So do we know how many elderly residents have taken advantage of that opportunity?
No, I believe we're about a week out before our assessor's office will be able to provide a report, but I'd be happy to forward that to you once he's completed his work.
And is there a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, an opportunity for extension? Like if people are just now getting the word that that's an option, is there an extension option?
I
That if they don't get it in by the 15th,
I believe that the deadline is set by statute, but I'll confirm for you.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Bermudez?
Thank you. One last question. Has there been an analysis, do we know what the number is in terms of the litigation on the stadium? How much we've spent?
To date, we have spent approximately $450,000, I believe. And I will say,
450.
The litigation is scheduled to go to trial in September of 2019, not 18, 19. We are just beginning there are a lot of motions that have been flying back and forth around trying to focus the litigation, and certain parties we've counterclaimed against are trying to get out of the litigation. So there's been a lot of time, and we haven't even started the process of depositions. The lawsuit against the city by CenterPlan alleges damages in the amount of close to $90 million.
I couldn't hear that last part.
The lawsuit alleges against the city damages in the amount of close to $90 million. $60 million in lost economic opportunity costs around the Dono development, and $30 million specifically on their inability to complete the stadium, and they believe they were wrongfully terminated.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to say congratulations. I see the email regarding the city's recovering $510,000 from the Dillon Stadium lawsuit, so kudos to your department.
Dylan won.
Dylan
not
won.
Dylan.
All right. So thank you so much. Appreciate your time, and have a good evening. Next, we will have the Office of our City Treasurer. Glad to have the Honorable Adam M. Cloud here, and also to assisting him, our Assistant City Treasurer, Carmen Sierra. So, Mr. Treasurer, you may take
Good
it
evening,
away.
all. Members of council, pleasure to be before you again. You know, one of the things that I take pride in my office is the promotion and growth of my people. And beside me is my deputy, who I'm going to turn this mic over to and let her present. You know, Carmen has served with me for nearly 5 years, and as we were talking about this preparation for tonight, I thought it appropriate that I pass the mantle a little bit and let her share with you all some insights. She spent a lot of time on this budget. Happy to answer any questions, but I really feel that, you know, one of the things that we don't do well in the city is cross-train and allow folks inside departments to really understand every aspect of government. And so one of the things I want to do in my office is continually promote my people to cross-train, understand the investment side of the business as well as the treasury side of the business versus the pension side. So I'll turn it over to Deputy Treasurer Sierra.
Well, thank you, Council President, members of the council. My presentation will be short and brief. I'm not sure about Treasurer Cloud, but my portion will be short. So with that, I'm going to start off with quickly our mission as a custodian and investor of all the city funds, co-issue of the city debt, and administrator of the city pension fund. It is the city treasurer mission to pursue prudent investment, cash management, and debt management policy so as to protect all the city monetary assets, relieve the burden of the taxpayers, leverage the power of the office to improve the quality of life of our residents, retirees, and businesses, while maintaining the utmost accuracy, honesty, and integrity of this operation. The next slide, you'll see the organization chart. On your right side, you're going to see Corporation Counsel and Finance. We work with them as partnership, and we also pay a portion of their salary. So if you looked, next to their title, it is 2 stars, which means that MERF pays 50% of the salary for Corporation Counsel and payroll. And MERF also pays 15% for finance accounting. The red stars mean these are staff that are paid by general funds. Our recommended budget for fiscal year 2019 is a total of $453,664. We have no grants, no capital improvement. This is a breakdown of the units of our office and the percentage of the $453,000. Custody fund, we have a total of $320,182. The executive office is $125,388, and the investment management is $8,114. This slide is the Treasury budget comparison analysis for the past several years. The R stands recommended budget from our office. The A is the adopted budget from Council, and the P is pending. So for fiscal year 2017, we recommended a total of $473,493. It was adopted at $391,650 with a decrease of $81,843. Fiscal year 218, we recommended a budget for $394,246. It was adopted at $455,933, an increase of $61,687. And for fiscal year 2019, the recommended budget was $453,663. And the pending budget is $558,509. There's an increase of $104,849. The budget increase for fiscal year 2019 is due to the reallocation of the OPID salaries to the general fund and the contractor increases of HMIA arbitration award in 2017. Treasurer?
Thank you. If you would flip the next page, please. The legal mandates for this office are pretty clear. We're required to provide leadership oversight and support to our employees to facilitate the achievement of our goals and outcomes. As stated before, we're the co-issuer of all city debt. In terms of investor relations and public information, we try to provide as much financial reporting and information as possible so that our processes are open and transparent. I would welcome anyone to take a look at our website, which is actually going under some reval now, but it's been a wealth of information for both investors and for retirees. On the website, we've provided a calculation app that allows retirees to estimate what their retirement benefits can be. We post all of our minutes from the Pension Commission meeting, the OPEB meetings. I put noteworthy articles regarding the investment world up there. There's some information quarterly on the status of the Hartford Parks Trust Fund. I'm actually going to skip through some of these other pages because I really want to get to a more core issue. If I could take everybody to page 13, which is the Parks Trust Summary.
Page 12.
I wanted to broach this subject with everybody tonight. I think everybody on council understands the Hartford Parks Trust Fund and that we've broken up the value of, we have a corpus that historically started when a parcel of land at Batterson Park was sold. The city collected about $8 million from that. That was the original corpus. We have subsequently invested those dollars over many years. We've brought the market value of those assets through investments up to $24.5 million. But because it's a trust fund, we try not to spend or are not permitted to spend the corpus, the principal amount, but only the interest income. And so what we show here today is that based on the annual income on the market value, so taking the $24.5 million, we generate annually $482,000, and from that, we split that by 3 different distribution categories. 70% of the $482,000 is available for beautification and conservation efforts in parks and cemeteries. 25% of that annual income goes to reoccurring capital expenditures. I'll try and draw the distinction. Beautification, think about if we want to put new plants and make things pretty in a park, compared to if a statue in a park was broken. That would be a capital expenditure. Then in 2012, the council created a tree ordinance, and 5% of that $482,000 goes to expenditure for the tree account. What you see in the bottom right corner on the total line, the 4.67, is how much has been withdrawn to date. So it's a tabulation of the numbers above over the last several years. I will share with you that last year, the mayor, Councilman Clerk, and I had an in-depth discussion about the Parks Trust Fund. Because we have some 20-some-odd million dollars in there, the mayor approached me on having a conversation about how to spend some of that, and we worked collaboratively with community groups and organizations to determine what we thought was a reasonable amount of the interest income available. So again, that, whatever's in excess of the principal amount. And over a course of several years, the mayor and I have agreed that we'd like to spend down somewhere between $10 to $12 million to help beautify our parks and make the city much more effective. What I do want to discuss tonight, provided there are no questions about this, but that one of the things that I get a lot of calls about is from concerned folks who care about the parks and the cemeteries and the beautification and kept of it. This trust fund is a bit of a secret, and we have a relatively good sense of how to invest those dollars, and we have good ordinances on how to disperse the dollars, but the procedure itself internally needs to be worked on, and I want to work with the finance director and the CFO about how we can tweak that a little bit so that the public knows better how to access the funds. And so I think that's something that strategically I'm excited to be able to work on. I'll give you a perfect example. You know, there's the Friends of Pope Park that have called and said that they'd like to access it, but they didn't know how to access it. They said that they've talked to you guys every once in a while, or they call the mayor's office, and everybody says, well, go talk to the treasurer because he manages that. Remember, we just distribute the money, and so there needs to be a much more formal process, almost like an application process, I think, that we can create so that the public knows how to draw down on the funds. I think that's one of the strategic goals I'd like to focus on so that it's much more clear. And then finally, on the last page, I have provided a graph that we used when we were going through the restructuring process that gives us a more current view of our general fund liquidity. That's a basic spot graph that's just showing it at various moments in time, the value of our funds that are liquid. With that, I'd close and I'd open ourselves to any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir and madam. I'll open up the floor to my council colleagues. Questions? Councilman Gale.
Did I skip it?
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very confused about that last graph that you have shown us. So I'm wondering if you could just walk me through a little bit. Do I understand, you know, if I pick a point in time here, and I'll take the second to the last point on the graph, which looks like it's last week, April 30th of 2018. One of those points is somewhere around 80 million.
No. It's closer to 170 million.
Well, take the point before that, I don't care. Any point. Does that mean that on or about that date, we had on hand $80 million sitting in the bank, or 170 million sitting in the bank?
Yes, in various banks.
In various banks.
Or at the short-term investment fund at the state of Connecticut.
And is that money totally accessible by the city to pay for payroll and supplies and ongoing expenses of running this government?
Yes.
So take me back to when, let's go back to September, August of last year. We had some presentations, and I'm not sure if you were part of that, but we had some presentations. Then Finance Director Darrell Hill, I think that was his title, came and showed us some spreadsheets that were designed to demonstrate the city's liquidity. And they were showing, to my recollection, these spreadsheets were showing the actual dollar amounts that the city had cash on hand, and they were showing, you know, our basic fund balances decreasing, and he set the spreadsheets up to show both the city side and the Board of Education side, and then he had a third sheet that combined the two of them. And the point in doing it was to demonstrate that on the city side, at least according to those sheets, if nothing else happened, we would be in a negative cash situation probably by September of that year. I've forgotten now, so don't hold me to any of these dates. But when he combined the Board of Education cash flow, it made the picture look a little rosier. But still, if I'm not mistaken, now those budget sheets showed that as of the first week in December of 2017, the City of Hartford, Board of Ed and City were going to be in a negative cash flow, a negative fund balance situation. I took that to mean zero in the bank. Now, I probably do not understand all of these things, but if I'm looking at your sheets, I'm seeing here at no time in the last year have we had less than $80 million on hand.
Yeah. I understand, and I appreciate that. And I recall the spreadsheets that CFO Hill created. I don't think I was with him during the presentation, but I certainly worked with him on the creation of them. Let me say the first thing. You're exactly right that in December, and I think also in April, we showed flatlining, basically, having a challenge, meeting our obligations. But you must also recall that there were different versions of that model that were particularly important, because I'll take you back to June, around this time last year, when we were supposed to have a budget and we didn't. And there was some presumptions that we had to make about what would happen if the governor's recommended budget hadn't happened, because he had put dollars that were committed to us that weren't in the analysis, which caused that cratering. In addition, when we think about going forward, and one of the benefits of what we've been able to do through the contract assistance is, I know you're looking backwards, but I just want to speak forward, that remember, with the debt assumption being taken, that's $40 million. I'll just round it out. The actual number is 48, but 40 million is what the state's committed to pay, that we're not going to have to take out of what we keep in the bank right now. Additionally, let's say a couple other things. It's a small point. It's not by the millions, but by the hundreds of thousands. I went back and did some research on our interest rate environment a year ago. So this time, a year ago, we were earning, if I could take you to page 13. And if you look down at in the blue box, the Farmington Bank with 17 some odd $1 million there. Next to it is the interest rate we're earning currently. That interest rate was less than 50 basis points a year ago. If I take you down to the kind of red box where it says stiff, currently we're receiving 1.73% on stiff earnings, and we've kept a lot of money there. And by the way, It was within the last 2 weeks, we just received $94 million, which was our ECS payment.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The ECS payment, the education cost sharing payment, recently came in. That's one of the reasons why, going back to
You got
this-
that big spike that went up.
That's the spike.
Okay, but so just humor me here. It looks to me like at no time in the last 12 months, so if I go from April 30th of 2017, it looks to me as though at no time from April 13th until today, April of 2017 rather, to today, has the city of Hartford had less cash on hand than about $75 million.
I think
Is
would be
that
accurate.
true?
That would be true. And let me also say that, remember, again, I'll go back to the budget issue. That's because we received our municipal aid. Had we not received it, none of these numbers would look real.
I get that, but I have to ask this. That's a 12-month cycle. In a 12-month cycle, I'm assuming that covers a complete budget year,
Yes.
and that therefore, every single expense that the city has in a 12-month cycle would have come out of there. Every single revenue that the city receives would have gone into there.
Yes.
In my simplistic mind, this says to me that we have a fund balance of about $75 million.
No.
I know that's wrong,
Yeah.
and so I'm asking, and if you don't have an explanation now, that's fine. But I do think we need some explanation, because this really and truly looks like, over a 12-month cycle, the city never had less than $75 million, and I must be missing something huge here.
Well, remember, you all, at the end of your process, set the revenue and expenses, which is the budget to be expended, right? The money to be expended through a fiscal year. And the mayor's proposed budget is, I can't remember the exact numbers, $600 million, something like that. You don't spend all of that on July 1, right? We also don't collect that $600 million on day 1, July 1. So that's the variance. That's why you see the variance. And further, going back historically, the other issue was there was a delay in the receipt of some of those dollars, which affected CFO Hill's analysis. But this is a true picture of what transpired in terms of our cash flow.
Okay. I don't know if you had received any questions in advance. I believe I had sent one in, but I'll just repeat it now. If you look at the table that you provided us with respect to the Parks Trust Fund,
Yep.
that's a very nice chart that shows what the fund balance in that trust fund has been since 2006. There's no comparable chart included in this presentation to show us what's in the pension fund. And that's a considerably bigger fund, and certainly one that we need to be aware of and paying attention to. So I would ask if in the next day or so you could send around to all council members a similar chart showing us the, pick a date, whatever date you typically value the fund, but just give us a year-over-year fund balance in our pension. And 6 years is probably fine. I would also like to know if you can easily put it into that chart, what you would define as your average rate of return each year during that 6-year cycle. So we would have an idea of how well our fund has been performing over the last 6 years. And I'd lastly ask for one final piece of information to go along with that. So a list of what our fund balances in the pension fund have been, let's say, for the last 6 years, what the average rate of return is for each of those 6 years, And then, I don't know if you have these things, but if they exist, I would like a little benchmark to show us what average municipal pension funds nationwide return 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. Now, data is not available in that format, whatever you can find that's somewhat comparable, but just something to give us a benchmark of our fund's performance.
Okay, a couple things. I'm sorry, are you finished? You all set? Okay. One, I'm always happy to talk about the pension fund. I spend a tremendous amount of my day focused on it, and am very satisfied with our performance. But tonight, you'll note that I specifically address general fund matters, because the pension fund is not a general fund, its budget is not a general fund response. You send money, a contribution that's required under an ordinance and the charter to make a payment for the contribution of the benefit payments owed to retirees. That's $44.3 million. The $111 million of payments that go annually to retirees consist of the $44.3 million of city contribution, approximately $12 million in employee contributions, and then the rest is made up by investment returns. And we have monthly meetings at the Pension Commission in which these matters are discussed extensively and exhaustively. I know that you've asked this question. I believe it's been answered more than once. But in an attempt to try and put some closure on your concerns, I will share with you the following. As of December 31st, 2017, the MERF performed by producing a 14.6% return versus our customized policy benchmark of 13.9%. Versus public funds valued at $1 billion or more, we rank 64th. However, because of the risk-adjusted return basis in which we make our allocation, we're ranked 7th. What does that mean? That means that we take less risk because we don't have as much exposure to equities as other public funds do, but we return better than most funds, even with the less risky equity investments. And as I stated last year, I will repeat, your request for a national benchmark, and I may be paraphrasing or not phrasing properly, but you're asking about how to benchmark us. We benchmark against a policy benchmark, which is a set of indices which best replicate the way that we allocate our portfolio. And our portfolio allocation is dissimilar from every other pension fund in the universe. So there is no universal measurement except for the policy benchmark that best reflects how you allocate your fund. And in that regard, we rank 7th, which is in the first quartile. With regards to straight returns, we have a benchmark expectation of 7.5%, and since inception, which is 1986, we have returned 8.5%. Beating that return, in the 3-year period, the MERF produced a 7.2% return versus a policy benchmark of 6.8%. In the 5-year period, we returned 7.3% versus the benchmark return of 6.8%. My point is that I welcome any questions, scrutiny, questions, or concerns. But you must understand how we perform in order to appreciate the response. And I welcome any time for you to come to a Pension Commission meeting, sit, and help us educate you more on this subject matter.
Okay,
Thank you very much, Mr. Cloud, but a couple of comments.
Councilman, we
Please,
got
Mr. Clark.
but we have to move along. There are other colleagues that have questions, including myself, so we want to try to move this along as expeditiously as possible. As customary, if you have any follow-up further conversations, we can have them offline. Councilwoman Jennings.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Treasurer and Deputy Treasurer, for your presentations. I have one question, and that is, how does the MARB impact the Treasurer's Office and the city, and how does it impact us at Tier 3, and how would it impact us at Tier 4 should that happen?
I'm a consummate optimist, and to go in reverse, I hope that we never have to experience Tier 4. I think that with the leadership in the city, from the top down the line, through the finance department, my office, I know that we are all very focused on it. It's about good governance, good management. I think a lot of that is in place now. I think we have to be watching every penny. I think we've done a good job of that. I think people don't recognize that, we cut our HUD count in the city of Hartford down almost 68 some odd % in the last maybe decade or so, or maybe it was a longer period of time. But that's unheard of, that we're still doing the good work of the people of the city of Hartford with significant cuts. Since 2017 and 18, it's a combined more than $20+ million in cuts just to operations. We're very bare bones. And with that, we have not seen a drop in the mill rate. We've seen a very positive move with outside investment coming into the city of Hartford with regards to some of the residential properties that are being converted and turned over. The feet on the street effect is real, I think. When I'm out walking in downtown, as I did today on a beautiful day, I was just pleased to see, one, how clean the city looks. I was pleased to see people walk in Constitution Plaza as I walked down to Front Street and walked by the UConn campus and see these young people here bring a little bit more livelihood. You see Front Street, folks are in the chairs eating, spending money. We have events at our convention center. There are plans that are being worked on to continue what we built with the stadium, but you've got the Bushnell Theater project on tap. You've got 100 Pearl now being renovated. So if we keep doing what we're doing, I don't think that Tier 4 is going to be something that it may affect us, and it may happen. There could always be a problem, but if we stay the course, I think we can avoid that. And I will tell you that late last week, when the mayor and I were up at the Capitol together with Senator Fanfara and Senator Fasano cutting this deal and working out the details, the one thing that the mayor and I fought back on was this question of automatic Tier 4. The Republican-led caucus wanted to see us go to Tier 4 immediately, and I, and as well as the mayor, disagreed strongly about that. And the reason why is, one, the mayor worked tirelessly to create a 5-year plan that works. It's tight, but it works. And to cut our knees off in 2 years just didn't make sense. It didn't even give us a chance to prove ourselves. And with all due respect, I think the perception of us has been miscued for a very long time. There is somehow an assumption that the city of Hartford has done things wrong and that we're incompetent in some way. And I take umbrage to that because I don't think that we have done anything necessarily wrong, but what people don't recognize is for so many years, this city has literally, by hook or by crook, survived. It has made sacrifices that we didn't cry about, complain about. We just did it until we recognized that we hit a wall. And when we hit that wall, we did the right thing. We went and had a conversation with the state about how to create a long-term partnership. With that in place, we should be provided the opportunity to succeed. And if we succeed, the investment would be a good return for all the taxpayers of the state of Connecticut. And I think that's what we should be focused on. The difference between Tier 3, Tier 4 is, it's much more oversight, but oversight won't mean anything if we don't get out the gate and execute some of the strategic initiatives, plans, and ideas that the mayor and you all as a body have decided will move the city forward. I have a lot of belief that the people that are coming before you at this table throughout these couple of weeks are focused, they're capable, and they're committed to doing what's right to make Hartford right. I hope that's responsive.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Bermudez.
Thank you for your presentation. In reference to the Board of Education's consolidation and the deferred compensation program, how much time did you all spend in reference to assisting with that?
We haven't been asked to partake at all
You have not.
the consolidation program at the school level.
And then, of your total budget of the 558,509, how much of it is outsourced? There's a category here that's investment management, and I'm wondering if that would be the section that is partially outsourced, but how much is it outsourced?
No, this is all, no outsourcing there. That's all about on the general fund side of our budget, the 453, what we're showing you on page 6 is that of that 453, there's really 3 functions in my office. There's a custody of funds office, and that's a staff of 5 people. That's what that represents. The executive office is myself, deputy treasurer, my executive assistant. And then the investment manager is 1 staffer whose total salary is far larger than $8,000, but the majority of his salary is paid for by the MRF. This is only the general fund component of his salary.
There's 2 different numbers. Why is that in reference to this presentation and then the book for the general fund? So on the 10-1, general fund total is 558, and then in your presentation it's 453.
That's what we recommended to the administration. They make some modification, and the modification is to 558.
Yeah, but the rationale for the modification, let me just walk you through that, because if you'll recall from prior presentations, as is the case with my salary, what we do often is we split it between 3 sources: general fund, MRF, and OPEB. The OPEB historically has picked up approximately $108,000 of the salaries. However, in this year's recommended budget from the administration, there was a decision made to take those monies that OPEB pays for and put it to general fund. That causes the disconnect between the numbers. However, I will tell you that the administration and I are having conversations, and we're going to have it tomorrow, about that issue, about removing the OPEB dollars, because while I understand the decision to do so, I'm of the opinion that because the OPEB trust fund is a trust and it was set in ordinance, that the administrative cost of the OPEB fund shall be paid out of the fund. I don't believe that it is appropriate for that $108,000 to be transferred back to the general fund. It should be a cost borne by the OPEB fund, not the general fund. Because it's work done by my staff for OPEB purposes, and it should be expended by the OPEB fund, not the general fund.
And then for my last question, under your department, has there been any considerations in terms of divesting or investing in green funds?
Yeah, more broadly, ESG. We've actually had a recent proposal from a manager to look at ESG, and we're very conscious about it. And I will tell you, I'm currently working on with one of our providers, our outside providers, which is ISS, and ISS is a proxy share company. So because we're a part owner in a lot of equities, we have a firm that actually votes at the annual meetings of all these companies, our interest. And one of the things that I've raised in lieu of Newtown and Parkland is that I'm not interested in seeing, I want to see whether we have ownership in either gun manufacturers, and I'd like to divest from gun manufacturers. And so what we're looking for right now is best practices in the industry on how to do it, because divestiture it's a public statement, but on the balance to that is, if you divest, then you have no say. If you actually are still there and own the securities, you can actually maybe engage in the conversation and be part of the corporate governance discussion. And so we're trying to weigh that and figure out what kind of investment policy we want to apply to the MRF that tells our ISS service provider what to tell the corporations that do own guns. We did do an analysis. We do not have a lot of gun ownership directly, like we don't own any Colt or Smith & Wesson, but we may own some manufacturing component part businesses that supply those parts to the gun manufacturers. So we're doing a full analysis on this.
And that full analysis would include also analysis in the green technology.
Well, this is a separate issue from green, because the gun violence is a distinct issue, but investing in green issues, as I said, there's a whole venue of investing, an investing theory called ESG, which is taking over. It's about sustainable growth and investing in sustainable companies that believe in those things that reside in the ideas of being healthier, greener, and safer. So we're trying to figure out how to do that more impactfully, because if we decide, so as an example, I've got plenty of equity managers.
So will that be an analysis that is also being done?
Well, yeah, we're looking at ESG as a whole
Okay.
investment asset class.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Council President.
Thank you, through the chair. Good evening, Treasurer Cloud and Assistant Treasurer Sierra. Thank you for your presentation. Just to follow up on Council Bermudez, Minority Leader Bermudez's comment, because I had the same disconnect, and I just want to make sure that I understand. So on like slide number 7, which breaks down fiscal year 19 with the R which is the recommended, the 453,663.
Yes.
And then fiscal year 19 P, what does that mean? What's P for?
That's what we are pending, meaning it hasn't been approved yet.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Hasn't been
That's the
approved by the
mayor's
council.
recommended.
No, it hasn't been approved by the council. Right,
Okay,
right.
so the R is for your recommendation? The
Yes.
treasurer's, okay. And then the P is what's pending, given the budget that he
Correct.
recommended for the 558. So the difference is the 104,80, 845, which is the contention, or,
Well, no, that's just the difference between what we recommended versus what is pending there. If you want to look at a difference of year to year, then you look at the fiscal 18 actual versus the fiscal 2019 P.
yeah, but then below, there's a note that says the budget increase for fiscal year 2019 is due to the reallocation of OPED salaries, which you
That's correct.
acknowledged, and then to the general fund, and then the contractual increases for HMIA arbitration award.
That's correct.
So is that the 104,845, or?
So, yeah, I'll be honest with you, I'm not quite sure. I just got the breakdown detail yesterday to help us with the OPEB salary amount. So there's something going on with that and the contractual agreement with HMIA. Because the total amount is, if I remember, Melissa, what is it, 108. So I'm not sure, quite frankly, because when we got this, I didn't have the backup that supports the increase, the total backup. You know how you guys get the detailed backup on the positions? We didn't have that until yesterday. So,
Okay. All right, I think I understand. I think I'm maybe still a little confused, so we'll follow up. I'll leave that alone.
but again, actually, Council President Thames, the distinction should be the number of 108 is the difference from last year to this year. And what's confusing is we're showing you what we submitted, the difference between what we submitted and what is being shown to you, recommended to you. You see the distinction between that? If you take the 455 versus the 558, I think that should get you to the 108.
Okay. But that is due to the reallocation of OPED salaries
Correct,
back to the general fund.
correct,
Which is the difference between what you recommended and what the administration is recommending,
yes, because,
and along with the HMIA arbitration
correct.
awards.
that's right.
Okay. So questions on slide number 13 with the various accounts that we have. So like Webster Bank, that's our big account that's like payroll or what have you.
That's for checking purposes, right, the in and outs of money. That's payroll and vendor expenses.
Okay. And then Farmington Bank is
Short-term liquidity,
short-term liquidity, okay. And United Bank is,
short-term liquidity.
okay. And the reason why we have multiple banks is because of the competitive rate and the nature of how we're using the funds?
Correct.
Okay. Is there an opportunity for, staying on that note with regard to the different financial institutions that we use outside of the MRF and, investments that we make in the portfolio, but with banks that, we do business with? Is there opportunities for community benefits, like, with regard to them, reinvesting back into the community, having a vested interest in, say, homeownership loans or, or what have you.
Yes.
Is that something that we have, is that a part of our agreement with them, or are those just kind of arbitrary ad hoc conversations that we have and try to explore when opportunities arise?
Well, first, with
I'm just trying to
regards-
gauge how does one engage in that conversation with
Right.
those.
I understand. With regards to internally here at City Hall, we have, we tend to do a bank fair twice a year to talk exactly about those issues for our employees. We also diligently require, or request, I should say, request of those service providers to be active in the community and to give back to the community and support various events, which they do. In addition, they send us a yearly report on their Community Reinvestment Act expenditures. And annually, I sit down with each of them to review that, to make sure that they are meeting, doing their best effort to try to do that. I would say that there are certain banks that are better than others. I think that there is a good opportunity for each of them to do as much as they possibly can. I think that there's room for growth. I would tell you that some of those that you don't see dollars with are ones that I've had more of a challenge than others to be socially engaged and community-minded. So it's part of the analysis. So yes, they may have a better rate, but I do evaluate whether or not they're stepping up within and for the community.
Thank you. Are there any, sorry, apologies if this was a part of the presentation because I did come in late, but are there any new positions in your budget?
No.
No? Are there any vacancies that you plan to fill?
I don't think so. Vacancy we're going to fill through.
On the Murph side, not general fund.
Not on the general fund side.
No.
No.
So what's the total budget, like outside of the general fund? So the general fund is this 5 or 58, let's just go with that number for now. What's the total treasurer budget as far as all the other percentages or positions that are funded through the MRF and other sources? Do you have that whole number?
So there's 17 total people inside of my auspices. 9 of them are general fund, 8 are non-general fund. And I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what that total of those 8 FTEs, what that expense is. It just doesn't run off the top of my head, and I don't want to give you an inaccurate number.
Okay, we can follow up. I'm just curious to get the full picture. And outside of the park trust funds, are there, I know you manage, pretty much all of the trust funds for the city. Are there any other, let me start off this. Do you have like a full listing of them? And then are there opportunities that we are, underutilizing or what? For example, I know we have like the Evelyn Prescott Fund that I believed, we were funding some community activities from Health and Human Services way back when. So I'm just curious to
Yeah, well, like for instance, the Larrabee Fund is a good example. The Larrabee Fund, we work closely. There's a society of the Larrabee women that help decide on how it's going to be spent, and one of my staff meets with them usually monthly, but sometimes quarterly, whenever they come with a request. So that's one that's outside of the Parks Fund. It's really to help indigent women, and we've been able to allow that to expand the definition, so it helps feed the homeless from time to time in soup kitchens and things of that nature, or young women that are displaced because of domestic abuse. But the odd thing about all the trust funds is that they exist due to trust documents. And so the trust documents are quite particular about how the dollars can be spent. And if it doesn't meet the expectation, then we don't release the funds. And there are some that started out, you know, I think there's one, I can't think of it, but it's for sick children and widowed women that I think was started in like the 30s. I mean, it doesn't really, its purpose was noble at the time, but it wasn't funded well. And so it doesn't, even though we drew income off of it, it doesn't kick off a lot of money, like, you know, a couple $100 a year in income. So that's an example of one, that it's there, but if you wanted to utilize it, there's not much utilization.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. You have a question? Is there an unfunded liability for the OPEB fund that the city and the Board of Ed is responsible for?
Yes, there is, which is reflected in our CAFR annually. You know, the OPEB liability is the long-term liability for health care for retirees. And the city for a very long time did a pay-as-you-go method relative to our liability. And several years ago, when I came into office, we worked to create the OPEB trust. And the whole benefit of that was to put dollars into it so that it would grow, just like a trust fund, so that we would have a stable interest income coming off it to help defer the outstanding cost associated with retiree health care. The board also had a liability. We went through a whole process of working with actuaries to create the valuation on the board side as well as the city side. When we opened the trust, created the trust document, the Board of Ed put in approximately $17 million, and the city put in $2 million, and we invest them jointly, but from an accounting purposes, they're segregated so that they respectfully deal with from an accounting basis, the liability for the board versus the liability on the city. The city's liability is clearly a lot higher, and it has less principal invested in it. And it would be my hope that over time, as we become more fiscally strong, that would be a commitment that we could make to fund that unfunded liability by making contributions into the OPEB trust fund. It's required under GASB. We need to do it. I'm not suggesting that we're not doing it. I'm just suggesting that given where we were financially, it's been very difficult to maximize that contribution.
Thank you. Councilman Sanchez?
Evening.
Evening.
Please excuse my tardiness here and through our chair. I have a question on page 13, just to piggyback off of Council President Thames. I see here in the charts that we have 7 accounts, and out of the 7 accounts, we have 4 at zero balance. And I'm just curious, are we being charged any kind of fees holding an account open in these institutions?
No, we're not.
And what's the purpose of keeping them?
I want the availability to be able to place dollars in them if they're able to meet or exceed the current rates that we receive from someone else.
Okay, so there's no fees?
No.
To the city, all right. And then going back on page 7, and my apologies if you already answered the question, so fiscal year 2019 R, which is your recommendation, and fiscal year 2019, which is the pending for council approval, this is a variance of 104,845. And I read what it says to the side. Can you explain that to me? I mean, it's due to the relocation of OPEB salaries. Can you explain this? What is that cost to actually for?
Could you just repeat that? What does that cost?
The 104,000?
Yeah.
What is the reason for that
Right.
increase?
So, if somebody who works in the tax office gets paid $50,000 a year, it's generally going to be paid out of the general fund budget, right? Their $50,000 comes as a expense out of the general fund. The decision that you make relative to the size of the budget. That $50,000 comes out of the $600 million that you're going to agree upon in a few weeks, right? That's general fund money. Sometimes in the city, people's salary gets covered by a federal grant. Or sometimes, we used to, when we had access to capital markets, we had the capital improvement dollars would pick up some of the tab for somebody's salary. In my office, we don't rely on federal grants to supplant our general fund expenditures, nor do we look at capital dollars to supplant our salaries. Instead, we have general fund pays a percentage of our salary. The pension fund, or MERF, pays some of our salaries, and then the OPEB, other post-employee benefits trust fund, pays some of those salaries. The total salary amount attributable to the OPEB fund is that amount. And that number is an incorrect reflection. It truly is 108,000, not 104. There's a reason why there's a difference, but it's $108,000, which is reflected in the book. You'll see the distinction between last year's actual and this year's proposed is the $108,000.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilman Deutsch, do you have any questions, or you all set? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I don't see the city clerk's office unless they're out there. Okay. Next up, we have the town and city clerk's office. And we have our assistant town and city clerk, Kelly Bilodeau. You alone today?
I'm all alone today.
Okay. All
How's everybody doing?
right. Have a way at it.
Good. All set. Good evening. Tonight I'll be presenting the budget for fiscal year 2018-2019 for the town and city clerk and vital records offices. The mission of the town and city clerk is to keep the most up-to-date and accurate official land and legislative records as required by state statutes in order to serve and support the city council, residents of Hartford, and the general public with accurate and timely information. The recommended budget for FY 2019 is $794,739. This reflects an increase of $17,470, or 2.2%, compared to the adopted budget for fiscal year 2018. The net increase is the result of contractual increases for the HPA Arbitration Award, Local 1716 employees, and Armored Car Services. Currently, we have 4 employees, full-time employees in vital records, and 6 full-time employees on the operations side of the town and city clerk's office. We've also applied for a Historic Documents Preservation Program grant in the amount of $9,500. And that will help us continue the ongoing project to preserve historical records. On the slide, you can see revenues. We are in the $2.3 million range. Almost half, or if not more than half of that, comes from the collection of conveyance tax on transfer of properties. Some of our accomplishments this year have been large land records conversion. We transferred all of our land records from a vendor that we used for 20-plus years. So it was a big undertaking. We transferred to a new vendor who made the functionality of the office much better, and we were able to add a lot of programs to the system at no additional cost. We've provided free access to many departments throughout the city to assist them in doing their job better and make it easier for them so that they don't always have to come to our office and that they can have access at any time. We also hope to add the absentee ballot program that this vendor offers, as well as a vital records program, which includes a portal for death and marriage records. We offer online record access at 3 different websites for different types of information. The information on the hartford.gov website includes council agendas, public hearing notices, and certified resolutions. If you're looking for municipal code, the charter, and council minutes, the council minutes we just moved to the municode.com website so that they were in place with the ordinances. We've also enhanced some of the features on that website. We've added Code Bank, Ord Bank, and Muni Docs, which is the council minutes. One of the really nice features of Ord Bank is that it will now have links to older versions of ordinances so that you don't have to look for the paper copy. It will be linked in the history section and available at any time to you. And the third site is for land records and anything related to real estate. On searchiqs.com, you can have access, as well as the public can have access to land records, maps, foreclosure registrations, and trade names. To view the documents, it is free. To print them, it's $2 per page. This is something we've also improved because with the prior vendor, you could not view the images. You would have to pay to view the images. And this year, we have already collected over $1 million in conveyance tax from the transfer of properties, and we still have about a month and a half to improve on that. In the coming fiscal year, we're going to handle a couple big elections, primaries, statewide offices. That will be around August and November. We have a potential increase for revenue with House Bill 5591 that the Town Clerks Association heavily supports. It would allow for the increase of certain municipal fees, which would allow for additional revenue for both the Town Clerk's office and the Vital Records office. One of the projects we're looking to do is some back scanning. We'd like to offer images prior to 2002. Currently, we only have images from 2002 to the present available online. So we hope to be able to do that. And we will be hoping to continue through the grant that I talked about previously, the Historic Documents Preservation Program. A lot of the records have been transferred over to the Hartford History Center. And we hope to continue to add them to the online finding aids at the History Center. The next slide just talks about some duties and responsibilities. Clearly, we do a little bit of everything. We provide clerical staffing and support service for the Court of Common Council, maintain records for all boards and commissions, maintain and prepare Court of Common Council minutes, certification of municipal documents, administer oath of office, record and index all city land records, issue dog licenses, record military discharges, keep notary, justice of the peace, and municipal campaign finance records, perform a variety of election-related duties, including the issuance of absentee ballots and preparation of state election reports, ensure compliance with Freedom of Information Act, issue applicable certificates and permits, sale of sporting licenses, and notary public services. Thank you for the time. If you have any questions.
Thank you. I have none. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, and through the chair, thank you very much for the presentation. Just had a couple quick questions on page, I think it has a number, but the one that has the 2017, 2018 actual revenues, a little chart. Do we not collect for birth certificates? Any money for birth certificates?
We do collect for birth certificates. A portion of that goes to the state, a large portion of that goes to the state.
Okay. And then, so the bottom, the $2.3 million, that is just the revenues that come into the city from the town clerk's office?
Correct.
Okay. And then, on, you mentioned for the searchiqs.com, it's $2 per page just to print. So that's if someone comes in to the town clerk's office, is looking and wants to print whatever it is.
That's if you want online access from home or from your office. It's $2 per page. It's a convenience fee.
And does that money go to them, or does it?
So $1 of it goes to the vendor, and $1 stays with the city.
Okay.
If you come into the office, you only pay $1 per page.
Okay. And then my last question, because we've talked about this for a long time, the increase, knowing that we can't really increase some municipal fees because it's mandated by state. And I see that there was a House Bill 5591, and maybe this is a question better for the mayor's office, but I've never seen it in our legislative agenda to support something like that. So I think it's important because obviously I know the Town Clerks Association has been kind of pushing this for several years now.
They've been trying really hard, yes.
And it seems like an easy thing that this city would be able to put on part of its legislative agenda in support of something like that. So I'm hoping next year we add it to the legislative agenda. If you can remind us early on in the year to add it on, I think it's important to do.
Very glad to help with that, yes.
Thank you.
Councilman Sanchez.
Thank you, Kelly, for the presentation. I'm just curious, the body removal permits, is that for cadavers?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
And, well, it's no pages here, the actual revenues,
The revenues
right there.
and the questions on body removal permits.
Body removal permits.
Okay, so that's revenue to the city. So each fee is collected with a different breakdown. So anything that you see on here, the city would be keeping.
Okay. So moving down to the marriage certificates and marriage licenses. I thought marriage license, we have a fee.
There's a fee.
Marriage certificates, is there not a fee connected to that?
There is a fee, yes. So for marriage certificate, it's $20.
Okay, I just
For the
don't
marriage license, it's $30.
So I just don't see it here. On your presentation.
So on their actual revenues?
I think it's a munis, it's the way the revenues are being reported in munis, and it requires follow-up.
Yes. So they are on there. How they're broken down, I'm not really sure, because this came out of munis.
Okay, so it's
I'm not really
combined
sure.
then.
I'm not sure how the breakdown is in munis.
Okay, can you give me that information?
I can definitely get that information for you.
And then down further with the dog account salary of warden. Can you explain that?
So that's per state statute. That is a particular fee that we have to pay. I don't know the exact amount. Again, I would have to look into that for you, but it's part of our reporting to the state.
So is this a fee that we pay to the state?
I don't want to answer the question yet. I have to get more information on that. But I don't believe that for the account of the warden, we pay to the state, no.
All right, I mean, it's not, it's not in the hundreds of thousands or millions, but
Right.
Nonetheless, the fact that the state, supposedly should be assisting us, every penny counts, in my opinion.
We don't make very much on the dogs. We make $1 per dog tax, so.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Minority Leader?
Thank you. So in reference to the House Bill 5591, which categories are there for the certain increases in municipal fees?
So the fees that I've been notified about were the liquor permit filing fee, miscellaneous document filing, map filing and indexing, and then map filing for a subdivision, notary publics for oath and commission filing, notary public for what we call an apostille, the marriage license fee, and the burial removal permit, and the cremation permit fee.
Okay.
So these are fees that have not changed, some since the 60s, some from the 70s, and some from the 80s.
Wow. And so each one would be, would have a different
Different
amount increase?
proposed, yeah. Different proposed fee, yes.
And so going back to, I guess it's slide 4, you were mentioning that there, for the birth certificates, for example, that there's a large portion of the fee that goes directly to the state. And I just find it really hard to believe, I mean, given that we are the capital city and we have 2 major hospitals here, and many babies are born here, so what % is it that goes to the state?
It's a dollar breakdown. I think that $19 goes to state. I don't want to quote that just because I'm not on the vital records side. I could get the breakdown for you, but I believe it's $19.
And so on average, the birth certificates cost, what, 25, 20?
They're $20. So I
$20.
don't, that's why I don't.
$20,
Yes.
okay. Wow.
Unless you can get the short form, but most people, for $15, most people do not get that because you really can't use it for anything.
So 99% goes to the state.
Yeah. A lot of our fees, most of the fee goes to the state. There's different breakdowns, like I said, for each fee.
Has there been any proposals beyond the legislation that's, that's being introduced in terms of increasing the fee? Has there been any legislation recently to make sure that we can acquire those fees as a municipality?
I can say that they're always trying. I can't say they've been successful. We just had an increase on the land records side. We only gained an extra $1.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. You're off the hot seat.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Have a great night.
Is the registrar of voters out there? There she is. Come on down. We have our next presentation. Yeah, it was record time. We have our Registrar of Voters office. And the presentation will be done by our Democratic Registrar, Giselle Feliciano. And we have our Republican Registrar. Good to see you. I didn't see you at first.
How are you?
Our Republican Registrar, Ms. Sheila Hall. You may take it away.
Good evening, Council.
You have 2
Presidents.
minutes.
Thank you. I'll make this brief.
Start off with our mission. First slide. First of all, sorry, you've already done the introductions. I have Ms. Sheila here to my left. She's the Republican Registrar. You have her deputy at the far left, which is Vanessa Garay Jackson. You have my deputy here on my right side, which is Ms. Kathy Brooks, and our executive assistant, which is Ms. Olga Colon. Our mission: the Registrar of Voters serves the needs of the voting public in the municipality in which it serves, in which they are elected. Registrar are governed by the Connecticut General Statutes. We are to uphold the current federal and local laws that deal with the citizens' right to vote. It is our sacred honor to protect, promote public trust and confidence. Our role demands that we ensure that the voting rights of our residents are protected and exercised in a fair and impartial manner. We are bound to uphold the integrity of the office to the best of our ability. Registrars continue to currently work with the Office of Secretary of State to develop best method procedures for the administrating elections. The next slide, you will see our organizational chart. The voters who we are responsible for: myself, the Secretary of State; Ms. Sheila, the Republican Registrar; my deputy, the Republican Deputy Registrar, which is Vanessa; our executive assistant, in a vacant position that we currently have, and we are in the process of trying to fill. Maintaining voter files, voting tabulators, and preparing for elections that are mandated by the Secretary of State. Doing daily updates by completing record retention, maintenance of enrollment, canvass, and DMV. Promoting voter education by engaging and informing citizens of the electoral process with a goal to increase voter participation, including all high school registrations. Per federal requirements, the registrars are meeting the needs of the city's diverse citizenship, providing training for election officials as schedules for regular elections and special elections. As you all know, in your coming up agenda, we have a special election that's going to take place June 4th, which is a Monday for the listening public. It's not a Tuesday. Conduct annual canvasses, voters, which is by court decree. We've processed 6,503 inactive voters this year, unlike last year where we did a citywide canvassing. Of course, responsible for the budgets on a yearly basis. We comply with all of the mandates by the Secretary of State, yearly calendars, deadlines that are subject to legislative revisions, which right now, currently, there were 19, unsure of how many have passed. We have processed in total from this past fiscal year to present 3,723 new voters. And we just you can add another 150 that came in, cards that came in today, not including the DMVs. Our strategic initiatives: implementing the use of e-books and new election equipment, which we're working closely with with management and budget and the grant departments in trying to improve that part. To improve certification election results on a timely manner by the use of the election management system, EMS, which is mandated by the Secretary of State. Conducting moderator and poll working trainings. Creating initiatives or an innovative way of improving outreach services. Maintain registrar of voter certificate, which are mandated under the general state statutes. We continue to work effectively with the SOT, which is the Secretary of State, to develop best way methods. As you see in the budget comparison for 14-18 to 2019, you see we're at a flat rate. The Registrar of Voters there was a reduction of, I believe, $43,000 last year from the Council, and that led us into a flat rate for budget this year. Our highlights for this budget coming year: of course, we just outlined it briefly for you guys, which is the party endorsements, which are happening this month. for state and Congress and statewide elections. We have district petitions that are going to be issued May 29th, primaries, which will be held on August 14th. We have election November 6th, which also will include EDR canvass, which again will begin January 1st, as every year. Our tabulating testing, which will happen soon, the retention of our records, petitions, audit, and so on. Of course, I just added in, as the same as last year, all the legal mandates that you can go freely into the general state statutes and review any that you have. And I'm sorry I rushed through it, but just trying to move it along so we can go on to the questions. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Question regarding, I see you, the implementation of the ebooks. What is the cost of that, and when are you looking to actually do that? Is that going to be for our upcoming January, July, what month? June, June election, or for our primary in August?
It will not be for the June election. The total cost right now estimated, I believe, was 46 and some change for just the ebooks. That's 25 ebooks plus, let's see, some other technical IT stuff that needs to be put in going forward. So we're hoping that we can get a model within the office so we can try it out for the August, but keeping our fingers crossed.
Okay, and comparing our registrar's office in this capital city compared to New Haven and Bridgeport, what's our size, and should the size be status quo, or the size of our registrar's office should be increased?
As far as staff?
As far as staff, yes.
As far as staff, I always say we need more. We're looking at, to date, we have 69,478 active voters, which what you see in front of you is what's taking place as far as handling the day-to-day basis, plus the extra. So staff is needed. I do not know exactly what other towns use or how they use it. I know with the bigger towns, they have actual assistant registrars that are there on a day-to-day basis, along with the registrars and their deputies, so they're full capacity. We're talking, I believe New Haven is one of them, because they have 44 precincts. Unlike us, we only have 25, and when we say 25, that's only for November because of the EDR process that we hold here in City Hall, but there's many things that can come into play that we will need staff.
And my last question, piggyback off of that, regarding precincts. When do precincts change? When the General Assembly recuts the districts, and who determines as to what precinct will be where?
As a matter of fact, last week, and Sheila can correct me if I'm wrong, we received our first notification that redistricting is going to begin. The process starts soon, so we will be working at that, I believe, within the next month or so.
Okay.
And it's a long yearly process. I believe it's a yearly process before it actually comes into effect, which, by the way, I would need an actual staff from a different department to come along with me and Sheila, who actually does the mapping within the city of Hartford, to outline those changes when they do occur.
And is there a cost that is incurred when redistricting takes place to the city? And if so, what is that amount?
That's hard to come up with a figure because it depends on the locations of where the redistricting is, and if we have to seek new polling locations. And then, depending on what the location is, if it's a school, then we don't have to pay, but if it's a private location, a facility, then we'd have to work that out. Right now, we're under contract through the city Corp Counsel, and we're paying the private locations $225 each time we rent. And that was, at one time, it was for 10 years, but the head of the department, who's no longer there, changed it to a yearly. So at any time, either the private locations or the city can change the agreement at any time. But it has to be beneficial to both parties, but it can be changed if we no longer need, let's say, United Way, because we're redistricting and moving it somewhere else, then they would no longer be part of the contract that we have.
Okay. And my last question is, and at any time, does the registrar's office close early? And if so, for what reason?
If we do close early, with no staff is there? Unbeknownst to me, that has not happened within my tenure. What we did do is close the office to the public while petitionings were being processed.
Okay.
Due to the fact that we are on a time limit when we receive petitions to return them right back to the Secretary of State.
Okay, fair enough. Councilman Deutsch?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. It does have budgetary implications in terms of the conduct of the voting throughout the city. Now, so far as I know, the only place where there are two particular parties guaranteed a place in government, this one or the state, is when it comes to the Registrar of Voters office, where, again, unless I'm mistaken, the law says that there must be a Democratic and a Republican representative, and then there could be a third or fourth, depending on the vote turnout, right?
Correct.
So my question is this, to colleagues and to you. What measures do you take in educating voters, whether they be young or old, that in this democracy there could be 3, 4, 5 parties, just like in Europe, and that they all have access to the ballot if they petition and they can observe the vote counting, and that there's no discrimination by political party. How do you, and also, there's no necessity for them to straight line vote, to slate vote, all. Now and then people are not informed that they can divide their votes among different lines. So how can you tell me how you educate all voters, especially the new ones, the youngest ones, but also others, that they have this free choice, and this is a democracy where we could have, as I say, 3, 4, 5 parties, just like in the rest of the world? How do you do that?
Well, it depends on the situation. When we go into the high schools, if we're asked to present, say, at law and government, then we present what we do, what the statutes are, the freedom of everyone to do as they please. If they want to run for an office, that you have the right, but you have to go through the Secretary of State in order to be qualified. But we're bipartisan, so we don't really go in and say, that it's just the Republican and the Democrat. That there are all sorts of parties that are out there. On our database alone, we have, I'd say, about 15 or 20 different parties. We've got Green Party, we've got the Conservative Party. You name it, it's there. So it depends on the circumstance, but we try to educate the public to know that anyone can run for an office if they get the support.
Just to piggyback on what Sheila also says, we are impartial. So when we approach anyone in regards to what party affiliation, and certain folks don't understand what party affiliation is, we allow them to, well, we give them a certain small script, Democrats, Republicans, different parties. You don't have to necessarily sign up for a party. Like she said, within the schools, they do ask a lot. The easiest way with high school students is describing Republican and Democrats is more of a, who's the current president? They're Republican. Trump is Republican, so that's what a Republican Party. He's from a Republican Party. Obama was Democrat, but there was also independent Tea parties. So there's a lot of ways of. It all depends on which group you're dealing with that comprehends certain things. On an individual basis, Dr. Deutsch, we do not tell people how to vote. That is an individual's choice. We do tell them that you have, depending on, say for example, Counsel's vote, it's clearly stated on the ballot, you can choose any 6 of your choice. So that's written on the ballot, instructions are there, the instructions are posted within the booths. We have our moderators and our assistant registrars who explain if they have any questions. We ourselves cannot point to say you gotta vote for this, you can vote here and come down here. That's a no-no in our book. We can say you can only choose 3, you can only choose 6, depending on the election that it is.
If I just ask one little technical, 2 little technical follow-ups on that. Would you or could you educate voters that it just so happens in the state legislature, there are not just 2 parties, there are 3, as far as I know, recently elected. And also, even, you don't mind, I hope I'm not nitpicking, when you say bipartisan, that means 2, right? When you say like bi-weekly or bi-monthly, that means twice. So do you think we could switch to the term, just the term nonpartisan?
Okay.
Something like that.
Sure.
I'm good with that.
You know, because it will help tell everyone that indeed it's an open democracy, and throughout history, there's no 1 or 2 parties have a grip on everything, right? Thank
We
you.
will take that into suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Council President.
Thank you, through the chair. Good evening, ladies. Good to see you.
Evening.
I have just one quick question, but a general comment. I mean, this is status quo budget, right? It's flat budget, same operating people as this current fiscal year, correct? So I just have a clarification on the slide number 6, where you say you canvassed 43,803 people?
No, that's the cost of the monies we have
Oh,
in our
okay.
budget
All right, I was
to
a little,
deal with that.
Okay, gotcha. What does that yield, though? So if you're spending, that's the postage,
The
you know.
cost of making the postcards.
Right,
the
right, the
actual-
printing materials
The
and all
printing,
that.
it's just not sending out the canvas card. There's a process to the canvas. Once you do the canvas, you send out the postcard. If you get it back in return, you have to resend another letter, and another process comes back. It's still, more postage is involved, more paper. Phone calls are involved, and that's also for the possibility of allowing us to hire someone to go out and do door knocking.
Gotcha. So how many voters does that represent? So if you're spending $43,803, like, how many doors, how many voters do you touch with that?
That depends on the way that we conduct the canvass. This year, we're targeting the inactive, which is a little under 7,000.
Under 70,000?
7,000. When those letters, we send out the canvas cards and then the letters, and when they come back, then we decide, based on how much money is left, whether we're going to send someone out to knock on doors to verify if these individuals are still at that residence. So a lot of people do not send back the cards, and a lot of them don't send back the letters either, or they won't accept it. So to try to get a handle on whether or not it's a true canvas, Sometimes we'll send out individuals to go to your house to see if you indeed do live there. And this will give us a true scenario as to whether or not the canvas is being productive that way. Because we have to do it, it's mandated that we are doing this each and every year. So if we do the active, which we did last year, we sent out to over 50,000. And when those cards came back, which a lot of people are still sending them from last year, so we're still getting 2017 cards returned, and we have to process those and make sure that the individual is still at their current address, or if they've moved, then we have to update that record. So it's a lot of tedious work, and then we do send out individuals occasionally, just like I said, to verify that the individuals are there, because a lot of people do not respond to the mailings.
Is there any, I don't know if my question is tied up in the whole online voting thing, but do they have online registration platforms? Is that legal? And so have we explored that? Is there a way to, make that investment? Because I would imagine that would bring that down a bit as far as the no, you're shaking your head.
No.
Am I?
That's different.
Online registration has actually been done by the Secretary of State for quite a while.
So we just
Anyone
piggyback
can go
off of that?
ahead and register. Right now, currently, you have Department of Motor Vehicle that's handling registrations as well. So when you go and you change your license, they ask you if you want to register. You can decline or accept it, and you have a chance to sign a registration card right there on an actual pad. Canvas is completely different.
So there's no online capability to do that?
No,
I think I was asking the question the wrong way. So there's no online
No
ability?
online canvassing, no.
No.
Is that against the law?
It was never explored. That's something that,
Yeah, I'm asking a question. I'm wondering if it's explorable, or is it restricted per law? So obviously, that will require acts of legislation, which is a different conversation. But if the law allows it, could we explore it?
That would be something that the Secretary of State would have to implement.
but currently you can go on the Secretariat's site and see whether or not you are registered and where you're registered to vote. So that's already technically there. We have to recall what canvassing is all about. It's almost as if the census, we can compare kind of the two. Do you still live there? Are you still located? The reason why the canvass came along was because certain folks felt that they were being disfranchised, or that the city of Hartford was disfranchising certain voters because they moved constantly. And that's when canvassing is, if you're inactive or have no activity within your registration, it takes 4 years plus 1, so it's a total of 5, for them to actually remove you. So when you do go to vote, even though you're inactive, you can still register and activate yourself on the spot at a polling place.
Do we ask for emails on the registration card?
No.
Is that now, or do we just take the generic form that's from the state and that's what
The
we
state.
use?
The
So the
state.
state hasn't instituted asking people for their emails address? Okay. Interesting.
Could I just say something that one of the reasons that we have all this to do is because individuals move, and they may notify the post office that they're moving. They may notify the insurance company or, other facilities or whatever, or other organizations, but they do not think it's necessary to contact the Registrar of Voters Office and update their mailing address. And we find that to be the case quite a bit, that John Doe has moved and just never notified us.
Yeah.
So when we send out a mailing or we do a canvass, then it comes back because we don't know where you are, so we're sending it to the old address, and until you go to vote, we have you on Sergeant Street, when in reality you moved to Collins Street. So then you're in a different district maybe, and then that's where we find out that the person has moved, and then we try to update. So a lot of people are not aware that when they move, they should also notify the Registrar of Voters Office to update their mailing address.
Do we have a link to the Secretary of State's office on our website? The Registrar's?
We did have our website at that time. We had a link that carry on, but as we know that the website is being redone. With that being said, unfortunately, with all the special elections and everything else, we have not been able to tag team with MHIS and the other folks in order to update our website, which we're currently working. I believe we have a meeting on May 11th, wow, this week, to do our update on our website.
So the next line is outreach, so that's $2,815 that's spent on outreach, and that is, what does that entail?
That entails going to all schools, elderly homes, any activities that is requested for us to attend to do registration. That also includes the supplies that giveaways and so forth. Supplies.
Thank you.
Printing.
Councilman Sanchez.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, thank you for the presentation. I just want to piggyback on Council President Thames' questions because I was looking at this, and canvassing and outreach to me is both in the same. And the reason why I say that is because I do work in community outreach. And I'm a little confused on this. So, you know, right here, a total of 46,000. So what I'm trying to understand here, and what I do understand so far, it includes the postage, right? The canvassing includes postage, the paper, the printing, so forth. Is that the part of the canvas?
Canvas is postage both ways, could triple because multiple steps are taken. Sending of postcards, sending of letters. It could take place of us technically hiring one person to handle canvas all year round.
Okay.
Because it could take one person alone just to deal with canvas.
So is it safe to say that this should fall under the category of a part-time position?
It could.
Okay. So then, with the part-time position,
You can see that because I'm here. Thank you. I'm sorry.
with the part-time position on the canvas, outreach should be attached to that as well, correct?
No.
So what is outreach again?
Outreach is, we're mandated by the Secretary of State, excuse me, tired, to make sure that we target high school students by a certain period of time.
Okay.
So we have to travel to all high schools. Outreach is also a National Registration Day, which we hold outside. Outreach can be us dealing with elderly centers. Outreach is many things.
So it's specific then, it's not actually going out into the community, it's just, it's what's mandated?
Canvas is mandatory by the courts. Outreach is mandatory by the Secretary of State.
Thank you.
Councilman Deutsch.
Thank you. Well, I had identical questions to what Councilman Sanchez just asked and what Council President Thames asked about why that figure, it seems to some people a little low. If we really want to get people out to come to the polls to be aware of it, say, I didn't even know there was a primary, or I didn't know this, that. and especially reaching not only high school students, of course, but maybe immigrant population, who may have registered or may not, and all this kind of stuff. So I guess I agree that some of us are puzzled that it's not more money, and it might not be worth it to have people aware of it, with newspaper ads a little bit more, stuff like that. Can you just say a few more words about the outreach component?
Ads are added in the newspaper every election. It's done several times, not only by our office, but also we work hand in hand with the town clerk's office. So you're getting double with the ad. We understand that folks don't all read the newspaper. So I know that Ms. Sheila tries to do small local newspapers that are free and placing in ads as well. The outreach, once again, is for us to go and more for supplies than anything when we go out to the neighborhoods, schools. Children like, if you give them a pen that says vote, they take that into consideration. They're more attracted to certain things. So that's basically what that small 2,000 is, if I'm answering your question is correctly.
How about public service ads in English and Spanish and maybe some other languages on radio and so on?
Well, I'll tell you, as a matter of fact, this morning, me and Ms. Hall were discussing this early this morning. Because June 4th is an election that's going to be held on a Monday and not a normal Tuesday, we both agreed to do postcards to the district. And this was an idea that was actually placed by a complaint that was put in the last time because the registrar's folks feel that we didn't go out there to make folks aware of elections. We are here to make an outreach to people for the elections, but we are not candidates. So we have to tread very lightly in our office how we make those announcements when it comes to certain elections, or all elections, I should say, not just certain elections. There's certain areas that there's a gray line we can't cross. So if a candidate is making opening of a headquarters, let's say, for example, we ourselves cannot be there posting people to register because then it's going to look like we're siding with that one candidate. So we have to tread lightly. So not that we don't want to make people aware. So getting back to this morning's conversation, we are sending cards just making people aware because this is a special election. It's not being held on a Monday. On a Tuesday, it's being held on a Monday. Please be aware that this election will take place. It's going to be both in English and Spanish. So we're working on that as we speak so we can send it out within a couple of weeks. Within a couple of days. But that's considered the outreach piece as well that you're discussing.
Okay, well, just to finish, but haven't the some of the radio stations, again in English and Spanish, or the TV networks been generous enough to have them as public service announcements without charge?
Once again, that's you got to tread lightly when it comes to our office and us. We can say there's going to be an election, but when they start getting into candidate pieces and areas like that, we can't cross that line. That's when it becomes a nonpartisan, bipartisan situation.
Councilman, I might add, those radio ads are quite a cost. And these days, and speaking from experience, they aren't willing to give up any of their airtime for free, no matter what the organization is. Councilman Winch?
Yes, I just want to say that, thank you all for actually doing that, because that's one of the things that's really important to get people out, especially when there are special elections. And in this case, it's a very special election because it's not being held on a Tuesday. So whatever you all can do to get that word out so that people know that has actually happened is great and is wonderful. And I do agree that $2,800 is not a lot of money considering the outreach that needs to happen. So when you talk about the mandatory canvassing and the outreach, that's still not a lot of money considering the postage, the cards, the mail, the employee, and everything else that has to go inside of there. So I'm just glad you're not asking for an increase in the budget to make that happen during these special elections that we've had to have this year in the city of Hartford. Just grateful that you are able to work within the budget that we've given you, and I know it's not easy. So I just want to say thank you all for that. And I don't have any questions, of the Registrar Voters Office. I think that, you guys are doing a great job to try to get more people involved and engage people. And it's not easy, like the chair said, to get radio to actually give you time. So just make, use that you can of the social media on your personal phones. And to do the social media stuff to let people know that it is, election time and, get out and especially since it's a Democratic election. You want to be, like you said, very careful that you aren't swaying people one side or the other, because while you all are elected Democratic registrar or Republican registrar, your office actually works together as one registrar office.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilwoman Bermudez.
Has there been any in the outreach category, any of those funds used to promote general election, obviously not one candidate or another or many candidates, but through social media?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat? I didn't hear you.
So from the outreach funds that you use, the 2008-15, does any of that amount, is that used through social, to promote that there is an election, to let people know that there is an election happening?
On social media?
Mm-hmm.
No. We don't have Facebook, Twitter, or anything to do with ROV. If that's your main question, we do not have social media for that.
Is that
something that's doable?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it is. It's the question of who will constantly update and so forth while we're trying to do our day-to-day basis.
Okay.
Councilwoman Jennings.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being kind to people. I sent people in with voter registration cards, and they're always treated so professionally. And they take the cards and they handle them very quickly. So I appreciate that. My question is, are we vulnerable to any type of outside hacking in the system that we currently have? So our system is not online? Good, okay. And do you have a number of how many people are disenfranchised due to the canvass that you do, if any? And what's the support, the backup to that if they're accidentally disenfranchised because they didn't send the card back?
There are no voters that are disenfranchised. That's a harsh word. That's like the skeleton head in our office. We don't disenfranchise anyone. The way canvass works, once again, in any voter in the system, because our system is the CVR system, the Connecticut Voters Registration System, which is run by the Secretary of State. Mm-hmm. Our own IT folks do not handle any of that. It's all run by the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State actually produces a list where they purge the voter for whatever reason, either felons, they have deceased, no activity within 4 plus 1 year, which is a total of 5, move. So we ourselves cannot automatically take someone off the roll system unless it's a legit, complete reasons, which we have to follow.
Thank you. One more question on that. What about felons? Is it, I know that on parole you cannot vote. If you're on parole, you cannot vote. You cannot vote if you're incarcerated. But what about as soon as they come out of prison, are their rights automatically reinstated, or you have to go out and re-register them again?
We get a list from the Secretary of State from releasees, felons. that we send them out their notice that they have completed what they needed to do within the court system. A letter is sent out to them along with registration cards. They're sent out certified mail by our office, and they're returned if they so choose to register as a voter. So we do that as a
And
monthly.
There's a lot of them that are not registered. So what is your return rate on those registered letters to felons when they get out of prison?
I could not give you an exact figure, but I can send it to you within the next 2 days
Okay.
of
Thank
what we've
you.
received so far.
Thank you.
Last question, Councilman Sanchez.
Thank you, Chair. So right now, we're going into a second special election. And I noticed that in the budget, I don't see any funds added there to cover the special elections. Is there a reason for that, or am I missing it?
For this fiscal year, Sheila has to dismiss herself, like I said earlier, so.
Yeah, but that question, it's the special election, which
Yes.
is not part of our budget. When we budget for the year, we budget according to the Secretary of State's calendar of what our
Elections are.
elections and primaries are for the year. Anything out of that is in addition. So therefore, we have to come and ask for those funds because they're not delegated, and it's not part of our budget that has been approved for our fiscal year.
Okay, and then with the, so with the following fiscal year, though, we know that there's going to be several elections coming up. When you put in the budget, are you going to budget that, or is it the
Yes.
same?
It's already in the budget.
It's in the budget.
It's in our sundry account.
We follow the Secretary of State's calendar for the year, which is what we give to you each year when we do our budget.
Right.
Those are already in there. And like we said, there are estimates if there's a primary, usually there's a Democrat primary, but occasionally there's a Republican primary based on what the seat is that might be up. And if that's the case, then I would prepare a business case and give you an estimated cost, if there should be one, so that you would be aware of the fact that this might happen, so it wouldn't come as a surprise later if the Republicans decide to have a primary for, as it turns out, for governor.
Okay.
Usually, it's the Democrats that are running for office, and the Republicans are laid back. But now, it's becoming more of a race wherein the Republicans are coming out, and that's all I can say on that. And I apologize, but I have a 9 o'clock deadline. I have to pick my granddaughter up by 9. So will you
I'll stay.
please excuse me? I thank you for taking the time to listen to me and my partners here, and if there's any further questions that I need to answer, I'm available tomorrow during regular working hours.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
So just to piggyback on what Ms. Hall was saying, we're unaware of when a special election is really going to take place.
Right. I understand that, but being that we're already within the budget season, and we're going into a special election, I was assuming that that would be added to this.
The one for June 4th, if you're
Yes.
wondering about June 4th, that's actually within this fiscal year.
It is.
Within 18, it's not with
Okay.
the
it's
coming
not the-
fiscal year.
Okay. All right, then my next question is the outreach again. Are we reaching out to our American citizen from the Caribbean islands, specifically Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, so we can register them?
We actually have 2 events that are coming up in August and September that we have set up time to go and have a registration drive with them. I know that Minority Leader Will DeLeese has done a great job in doing many of those events. Unless I'm aware of a lot of the events, we will not be known where to attend or where to go. I know that I am trying to make sure now that the Puerto Rican Parade is going to be here. I've outreach to some of the coordinators to see whether or not we can set up a table outside on the lawns or even in front of City Hall, however it may be, to try to register as many folks as we can. But we do outreach to as many people as.
Excellent, thank you.
Madam Minority Leader.
Just going to mention that the Puerto Rican Parade is coming up, so it would be a good event to go to on June 2nd to table.
And, sorry, 'cause I did just remember that 311 does assist with making sure that the public does know through their website and their weekly. So Ms. Castleton does assist us with announcing election dates. So that's one way of the media, just to piggyback on that question you asked.
Thank you very much for your time and your presentation.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You as well.
All right, next up, we have the Mayor's Office. A presentation made by Ms. Thea Montanez, the Mayor's Chief of Staff. Good evening.
Chairman Clerk. Good evening, Council President Thames and members of City Council. I'm joined this evening by Shubhra Kambli, our Sustainability Coordinator for the Office of Sustainability, along with Janice Castle, our Director of Community Engagement and 311. Alex Bodwin, who manages our Intergovernmental Affairs, is not here. She's at the Capitol right now. And Srivasa is in the audience this evening. So I'll begin with page 2. The presentation simply provides an overview of our mission within the Mayor's Office, which, as you know, is to manage and provide policy direction to all city departments in order to fulfill the priorities and goals set for the City of Hartford, and in addition to manage external affairs and serve as a liaison to public and private sector partners. Strategic initiatives for fiscal year 19, we have 4 major focuses: achieving financial stability and pursuing economic growth; the second, promoting development in the city; the third, keeping our streets safe and our neighborhoods strong; and the fourth, expanding opportunities for Hartford youth, specifically justice-involved youth. Page number 4 is simply an organizational chart. Of course, Mayor Bronin, myself, and then members of our team. So there's the mayor's administrative staff. My apologies, that says 5. It should say 6. The Office of Community Engagement includes 2 employees. Our 311 Service Center is 3 people, and our Office of Sustainability is 2. And the Office of Sustainability is coded in green to represent the fact that it is 100% grant funded. Page 5 simply provides an overview of our budget from fiscal year 2018 that was adopted in comparison to what it is we're proposing for fiscal year 19. You'll see that there's a slight increase of 0.2%, and that's reflective of the fact that we had to provide an increase as per the negotiated general wage increase with 1716. I'll note that since fiscal year 16, combined spending in the mayor's office, including 311 and the Office of Communications and New Media, which is no longer, has been reduced by 47%. Page 6 speaks to the work that we focus on in the mayor's administrative offices. Again, I apologize, that says 5, it should say 6. We provide administrative leadership for city government. We try to, in an effective and responsive manner, including managing the mayor's calendar. In addition, researching key issues and formulating and preparing a wide variety of written materials, including correspondence, briefing materials, the city budget address, the State of the City address, other speeches, press releases, and other public information for the media and the public. Page 7 highlights some of our results from this fiscal year, beginning with the fact that we secured $2.7 million for the second year in a row from 6 private funders to support Hartford Youth Service Corps. We're proud to say that we were able to enroll over 200 youth, city youth, in the Hartford Youth Service Corps program. They're provided year-long part-time employment, making minimum wage, and also provided with a case manager to help them with whatever it is that they need support with. The second is we were able to secure $1 million in private funding to assist those community-based organizations that were adversely impacted by the cuts that were made in fiscal year 17. Examples of that for our Journey Home. At one point, the city of Hartford contributed, I believe, about $95,000 maybe from the general fund to Journey Home. We were able to identify those funds through private funders, and we were successful in doing that with many other agencies that historically received funding through the general fund. The third is we secured $500,000 to launch the Summer in the City event series, and we are very happy to announce that we will be doing it again for the second year this summer. As you know, historically, the city of Hartford subsidized over $1 million to various parades and festivals and events, and due to the fiscal crisis, we had to eliminate that funding. However, we were able to secure private funding to support some of our larger parades and festivals. And most recently, it was announced that we were awarded Bloomberg Philanthropies 2018 Mayor's Challenge Champion City Grant. This summer will mark over a year that we've been working on this particular grant program. We are focusing on trying to find a solution to treating childhood trauma that is induced by gun violence. And so we are currently working on our application. We're hoping to submit in August, and Bloomberg will announce the winners in October. First prize is $5 million, and 4 additional cities will each receive $1 million each. And this is not noted on this page, but one of the things we're also very proud of is the fact that we partnered with Community Partners in Action to receive a $450,000 grant from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving to support the creation of the Hartford Reentry Center that will be located here in City Hall, hopefully beginning in July. Page 8 speaks to intergovernmental affairs, again serving as a liaison to the City Council along with our state and federal agency partners. Some highlights from this fiscal year include submitted written testimony on 11 bills during this session, and we've listed those bills in the presentation. And the second is advocating and working towards passage of policy priorities, including the passing of an ordinance regulating crisis pregnancy centers located in the city of Hartford, and also reestablishing certain key commissions, including the LGBTQ Commission and the Commission on the Status of Women. And now community engagement. Community engagement reflects 2 people, as you can see. Roles and responsibilities is to respond to residents' requests for information, service assistance, any requests that are made in person, via phone, or through our online submission system. This team also represents the mayor's office and the city at various community meetings, including each of our NRZ and Hartford 2000 meetings, as well as any type of community forum and town halls that are planned for the purposes of sharing information with our constituents. Some highlights from this fiscal year, including that we launched the One Hartford weekly newsletter. I believe this June will mark a year that we began sending that out, and we have a distribution of
A little under 6,000.
So 6,000 people have registered so far to receive that newsletter that comes out every Monday morning. We've established a presence of Hartford 311 on Facebook. We've partnered with Public Works on a variety of different programs, including the Neighborhood Speed Hump program. I'm sure Public Works talked about that earlier this week, and then the Streets Division for leaf collection and change in bulky waste. We've partnered with the Director of Blight Remediation on her One Block, One NRZ initiative. We've partnered with the Housing Department and Habitat for Humanity and the Voices of Women of Color for a home repair project in the Blue Hills neighborhood. And we've partnered across departments to build seasonal resident guides that we've been sending out to share information about city services. Continuing on to results, organized 18 town halls attended by over 1,000 residents, monthly staff attendance at NRZs and community meetings. We launched the volunteer recognition program, and this Monday will be the first time we'll be recognizing our volunteer, our youth volunteer of the month, as well as our adult volunteer of the month. We've secured approximately $30,000 from the Larrabee Fund on behalf of residents for rent and utility assistance. We're currently finalizing a partnership with a local nonprofit for assistance for other utility services and household items. And we have served approximately 1,200 residents through, again, walk-ins, phone calls, and online submissions. And that pie chart just reflects how we're interacting with folks when they come through our doors. Page 12 is the 311 Service Center downstairs in the ground lobby. We have 3 people there. They're there to provide the public with quick and easy access to all city services and information. Big focus on customer service and providing insight into the ways in which we can improve our operations and service delivery. Page 13 reflects highlights from this past year, including the fact that they have received over 50,000 service calls. 1.5 staff was able to respond to approximately 30,000 of those calls. Average calls answered per rep was 20,000 compared to last year at 18,000. And over 5,500 work orders were submitted to various city departments for processing. Below, you'll see 2 pie charts that breaks down the calls for information versus city service work orders. And the second are work orders by department. You'll see the overwhelming majority of requests are made to the Department of Public Works, and then second is Development Services. Page 14, the Office of Sustainability. So we're really excited about the work that this group has been doing, being led by Shubhita Kambli. Again, it's 100% grant funded. They are focused on projects related to the Climate Action Plan. We are, I think, one of the few cities in the state to have adopted a Climate Action Plan. Is that right, Shubhita? Am I misspeaking?
Quite so comprehensive.
Yes, that is comprehensive. I should include that word. For improved cost savings and the benefit of all residents, the plan was drafted by a 34-member Climate Stewardship Council and then adopted by all of you in January of 2018. Initial areas of activity within the office include energy projects, green infrastructure, and prevention of localized flooding and community outreach. And the plan envisions environmental efforts as a catalyst for improved economic development, public health, and social equity. It outlines goals and strategies related to energy, food, landscape, waste, water, and transportation. Page 15, some of the outcomes of Climate Action Outreach has partnered with various organizations throughout the community, including BCCO, Knox, and Keeney Bark Sustainability Project. These meetings featured presentations by local grassroots organizations and discussion related to the Climate Action Plan. Each meeting attracted about an average of 20 participants. Boards and commissions, the office staffs both the new Energy Improvement District Board and the Advisory Commission on the Environment. The EID board recently issued a comprehensive plan to expand renewable energy capacity and energy efficiency across the city. The office also participates in the Food Policy Commission Sustainability Working Group and supports the Tree Commission in its efforts to finalize the tree plan. Page 16, this is just a breakdown of the various, the 5 areas that I mentioned that we focus on in the Climate Action Plan, beginning with energy. We anticipate hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings from 2 energy projects related to renewable energy credits and virtual net metering credits. And there's a breakdown a little bit more about what those different initiatives we've been working on. The second here is transportation. Lime Bike, dockless bike shares coming to Hartford soon. They've just hired an operations manager. There'll be 300 bicycles distributed citywide. And again, there's various efforts that have been underway related to transportation. Page 17 focuses on green infrastructure, specifically landscape and water. We've launched a residential program to capture rainwater for use on lawns and gardens, so it diverts stormwater from basements in the combined sewer. Earth Day just passed us, but we had a really neat project that we did where we tagged our trees across the city and just raised awareness about the value of trees. We continue to work with our Planning and Zoning Commission and supported them in supporting the eliminating parking minimums and the introduction of stormwater fees. With regard to food, we've created partnerships with Fair Foods and Food Share, and we were able to coordinate a delivery of 2.5 tons of fresh produce during Thanksgiving to our residents. And last but not least, waste. The office secured a $17,000 grant for local nonprofit Vecinos Unidos to create green jobs related to recycling outreach. At this time, we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you for your presentation. I'll open up the floor to my council colleagues with any questions. Any questions? Councilwoman Jennings.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. On page 16 there, we had, you talked about energy. We will be receiving approximately $104,000 in savings per year for the term of the VFS fuel cell contract. What is the VFS fuel cell contract?
We have a fuel cell at the Hartford Public Safety Complex.
Wait, can everyone hear you?
Sure. How's that? Okay, we have a fuel cell at the Hartford Public Safety Complex, and associated with production of power, we are receiving renewable energy credits that will benefit the city at about $114,000 per year, minus some management fees, so we'll net about $104,000, and that money will offset our current electricity spend.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, you talked about more extensive savings will be achieved through the Streetlights Retrofit Project funded by a $5 million DEEP grant. When will that streetlight retrofit project take place, and will it be citywide?
It will be citywide. Eversource owns a portion of the streetlights in the city, and that work with retrofitting the Eversource streetlights is already underway. The city will also be retrofitting or upgrading our streetlights, and that should be completed by the end of the summer.
Thank you. And my last question has to do with page 17, working with the Planning and Zoning Commission, our Green Infrastructure Assistant also supported the elimination of parking minimums and introduction of stormwater fees. Can you explain the parking minimums and the stormwater fees?
I can gather more information on elimination of the parking minimums and introduction of stormwater fees.
Wait, I can't hear you.
I can gather more information and send it to you afterwards. I can't speak to it right now, but I'm happy to provide additional
Okay,
information.
so you'll get more information
That's
to
right.
us. You can probably give it to our council president, and then she'll distribute it to the rest of us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Deutsch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe we can go back sequentially through some of the slides.
Sure.
With a couple of questions. So going to page 3, strategic initiatives. On the last one, some of us had submitted issues that we had hoped would be raised before the state legislature, even though it's a short session. And the last bullet there, one or two I had suggested in terms of juvenile justice and lobbying along with many others to make it more possible for some of our city people who've been incarcerated as youth to appeal for sentence reduction. Or to have a hearing, which right now is very, very difficult for these lengthy sentences that have been recognized by the Supreme Court. So to make it short, did we include in our legislative package, which I'll get to later, issues related to juvenile justice for city or all residents? How do we lobby the legislature as an initiative?
I don't believe we supported that particular proposed bill that you speak of with regard to reducing sentences, is it?
Well, it was one of many, enabling, having in the law the ability for a young person or his or her representative to have access to a hearing. Right now, it's dependent on permission from the state's attorney, which many times she doesn't give, even though she had prosecuted the case. And nowadays, since these long cases, there would probably be a new method of getting a hearing. So this affects some of our youth, and we've all talked about the incarceration, the mass incarceration.
Yes. Yep.
And so I'd like to know, well, I'll get to it later, but how?
Sure.
Okay, so that was not a formal part of our agenda at this point. Skipping to page 7. in the second bullet, secured private funding, can you just send us a list of the private funding that went into that feature to assist community-based organizations?
Of course, I'll be happy to do that.
A simple list of donors and what they gave.
Sure.
So we can appreciate that.
Sure.
On the next page, which was page 8, and this also is interesting. The first bullet, we submitted, as a city, I suppose, written testimony on those 11 bills. And again, I may have missed it, but were city council members provided copies of all of those so that we knew what we were agitating for, legislating for?
Sure, I will follow up with Alex Bodwin specifically if those pieces of testimony were drafted to the City Council. I know that Alex worked first with City Council leadership as we began to develop our legislative agenda for this year, and then she attended the Legislative Committee of the Council to talk to various council members, and I know you and her had also communicated about your insights prior to us actually finalizing it. And I believe the document was sent to everyone, but I can confirm the bills specifically.
Right. So for sake of efficiency, if I can go on, for the sake of efficiency, when these are emailed out, why not include the whole city council and not just the leadership of it? Because sometimes there's a time delay or an absence, which can make a difference maybe. So
what I was attempting to say was that we first spoke to City Council leadership about the legislative agenda, but when it came to actually sharing the document in its final form, I believe we emailed that to everyone, but I will confirm that.
well, I could be mistaken, but for instance,
Yeah, it was emailed, through the chair. It was emailed out, and also it was referred to committee, and our chair of the Legislative Affairs Committee, Councilman Gale, had a meeting, and that was an opportunity to discuss, add, what have you. So there was plenty of opportunity, and I know
Well-
that you and Alex, the mayor's legislative aide, went back and forth multiple times.
right, exactly.
Per
So
my observation.
if I may continue, it was kind of a waste of everyone's energies, to be honest, that I had to request of Alex some of those things. And I don't believe, unless I've missed it, the issue, let's say, Medicaid work requirements. I don't know which of us received it, and then it had to go through a committee and be discussed verbally before actually receiving the thing in an email.
I will follow up with Alex. I know that she had attempted to schedule 2 meetings with you to go over the legislative agenda, and unfortunately, for whatever reasons, those meetings did not happen, but I can follow up with her regarding the specific bills.
Yes, all I'm asking is, in these electronic days, it's not even a waste of paper, just
Sure.
a few seconds to put whole city council instead of the individuals who are burdened by distributing it.
Sure.
Okay,
We're
so-
happy to do that.
Right, so that's just a suggestion on that first bullet there, that we all have it, and, none of us are caught by surprise. Some we'd be happy to go to the legislature to support actively, individually, even tonight, if we finish early. Okay, going on and
That's
almost
our plan,
time
to finish early.
What's that?
That's our plan, to finish early tonight. That's our
Yes.
goal.
Okay, here, and quickly on page 11.
Yes.
On page 11, you know that on the first bullet, there may well be some city council members who'd like to join in the town halls.
Sure.
But sometimes, as you may know, they're scheduled simultaneous with some of our obligations, which can range not just Mondays, but otherwise. So would it be helpful to schedule those town hall meetings at a time when some city council members can attend in some numbers, not just, and even maybe speak on a panel or something, but just to schedule so that we can have participation greater from both branches. So it's just a thought about scheduling it,
Okay.
Okay, and then lastly, on page 15. The very last few words are the tree plan, and some people have spoken passionately about the importance of the tree canopy and maintaining it well. And avoiding lawsuits when we have limbs fall on little girls and things of that sort. But yet, sometimes I have gone out on the street and seen, asked people from DPW, and then I've also seen contractors from out of town. But to a person, they've told me that, unlike the old days, we don't have a regular tree canopy maintenance program where some of our city employees drive the streets looking up at the trees and making sure that there are no limbs that need cutting, even without the homeowner or somebody calling. In other words, surveillance, prevention. And they may be wrong, but I ask them, and they say, no, we do it on call or when there's an emergency, but not routinely the way we used to do. What's the reality for that?
I would need to discuss that with Chief Freeman, the Interim Director of Public Works, along with Heather Dion, the tree forester, but I'm happy to talk to them and get back to you.
Fine, okay. I mean, I've done that, and by all means, confirm it. Okay, good, so that we don't get beamed on the head by a dead limb. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Bermudez.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. Whether it's through the mayor's department or any other department reflected in the budget, moving forward, given that there has been a large influx of families who've been displaced by Hurricane Maria, moving forward, where would we find that in terms of quantifiable potential funds, whether it's the mayor's department or other departments that are going to be allocated, designated to assisting those families?
I'm sorry, the question again, are you asking if there's private philanthropy available to assist families that have been displaced by the hurricane?
Not, well, certainly there's philanthropy, but if there's any item designated in our budget allocated for the families.
Not that I'm aware of. I'd have to defer to our CFO, who's just stepped out of the room, but I would not be aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question. I did not hear Councilman Deutsch, so he might have asked the same question. On page 7, the 1 million secured private funding, can you just get a list of all those community organizations? Because I know there were some that were cut out
Yes.
of this present year's budget.
Absolutely.
Okay. And any other of my colleagues to the right have questions? No.
Chairman Clerk, can I just go back, I'm sorry, to Councilwoman Bermudez's question. In the mayor's recommended spending for CDBG funds, in that recommendation, there is an organization that is serving displaced families that he's recommended to receive funding. So that is the one thing that I'm aware of that's specific to support families that have been displaced.
From the federal funds for the CDBG?
Correct. Yeah, community development block grants.
Comment or actual question?
A question. May we have next year, in late December or early January, as it used to be, the mayor's proposed legislative agenda going to the state legislature early before the session begins, so that all of us in council or even public can say, these are the mayor's proposed items for the state legislature. Would you please comment? And then 2 weeks later, we'll formulate a single, unified legislative agenda for the whole city. Can this be done in early January, let's
I
say?
believe we've done it for the past 2 years under Mayor Bronin's leadership. It's never just been Mayor Bronin's legislative priorities. We've always done that in consultation with the City Council.
I meant written down and circulated, because
Yes,
as
yes.
much as I pleaded to see a thing in writing, maybe it was me, but I didn't succeed in getting a written list the way it was. Am I right?
Thank you, sir. We can follow up offline about this. One last question, Madam Minority Leader.
Thank you. This is in reference to the energy efficiency. We recognize that this is a beautiful building, historic building, probably should be a museum, and it's very costly to us. It's just, on the energy efficiency front and using our council office as an example, you know, we see oftentimes that we have to run, right, because it heats up very quickly, and so we have to run the AC. But also there's times where, you know, we have to take it upon ourselves to make sure that we turn off the ACs manually, the air conditioners, and then the fans that are left on, and the lights. And so was wondering if there's any initiative to help with that so that we can offset our costs.
No, we're just planning. Yeah, at this time, I believe Shubin and her team are planning towards that, because we've recognized that very same thing as well.
Or turning off the lights in the daytime is another example.
Not all the time.
All things to consider. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
And last but not least, our Office of the Chief Operating Officer in his first appearance before the City Council. You have Ron Van Winkle. Along with Courtney Jackson and Faith Palmer. And Maritza Brathwaite. You have a 2-minute presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, my first time before you. We have a short presentation, and we'll go home. The first page is just out of your charter. It says, "There shall be a chief operating officer." I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. At the end, it talks about a substantial executive and administrative experience. I've worked in leadership positions in local government for 30 years, so I probably fit the classification that you're looking for, and it's a real pleasure to come and work in this community. With me is my assistant, Faith Palmer, who is going to speak about our relocation efforts and where we are with all of that. Next to her is Courtney Jackson, who I know you know these people well, our North Hartford Promise Zone and our Brothers Keeper programs, and the woman who actually runs the entire City Hall, Maritza Braithwaite. She is the one, if you have a question and want to know how something works or is happening at City Hall, she's the one to talk to. Also part of this department are two individuals, Marcelina Milner and Cedric Davis, that run our print shop and our mail service. Talented staff. And I wanted to say to you two things that I've learned in 3 months. One is that the city has an incredibly talented staff. Talented, hardworking, dedicated. As hard as any community around. I mean, I've worked in other communities. I've dealt with lots of municipalities in the state of Connecticut. Your staff is as good as any town. So, you know, we don't have a problem with having really good quality people working for us who work long hours for us. I will guarantee you that. The second surprising thing, and one that I never realized, and again, I was born here in Connecticut, 4 miles from City Hall, spent my whole life here. No one outside the city knows or understands the challenges this city faces. I was impressed, I was amazed at the kinds of issues that you have to deal with in this city. And outside of the city, we think of Hartford as the Bushnell. We think of Hartford as the downtown. They do not understand the challenge to be able to run the city. Councilwoman Jennings, you know, you talked about the people who come and use our city. and don't end up paying for using the city, whether it's their sewage or their trucks or their transportation here, to the largest economic force in the state of Connecticut. No municipality is richer than Hartford. $8 billion worth of wages are earned in our city. And no municipality is poorer than our city, by far. Not close to Bridgeport, by far the poorest city in the state. That dysfunction is extraordinary, and I don't think we have done a good enough job communicating that to our region. So the Chief Operating Officer obviously has substantial responsibilities. I'm more on the business side of your operation. I'm trying to make sure that we operate well, we have the resources, we're making good decisions, and it's even more important today when we are so cash short and need to allocate those dollars in the most effective way. And so, since I've been, sorry, thank you. All right. Since I've been here, I've spent a lot of time with our CFO, working on budgets and capital budgets. And one thing I will say, that Melissa McCaw is one of the most extraordinary administrators I've ever met. She's worth 10 times me. She is able to do things, learns quickly, analyzes quickly. She's a pleasure to work with. Yes, yeah. And I've worked with lots of people. And I didn't say that because I wanted Melissa to like me tomorrow. I said that because that's really true. As you know, we've been working with relocation issues in the city, and I wanted to have Faith give a little discussion of where we are. Faith has been responsible for coordinating all those efforts among the departments.
Thank you. Through the fiscal year of 2018, the Office of the Chief Operating Officer continues the collaborative work and comprehensive review of Health and Human Services Relocation Assistance Program with HHS's assistance, Corporation Counsel, Development Services, the Fire Department, and the Finance Department. First, I would like to thank the team from each department for their tireless efforts in this endeavor. We could have not gotten this far without everyone's contribution. And there is a constant contact between all the collaborative departments. In order for families to receive assistance through the Relocation Act, under the Uniform Relocation Act, there has to be an order for them to leave their residence due to code enforcement activity or due to a fire, which the building is unsafe. And property owners are responsible for the expenses of emergency housing, moving, storage, and other expenses that come along. And to give you a background, currently in the relocation program for fiscal year 2018, there have been 102 cases that we've assisted families. And in prior years, 2015, it was 174 families, 2016, 249, in 2017, 192. Previously, the average stay was 138 days, and currently it is down to 58 days for families in emergency housing before getting permanent housing. And I will give you some of the highlights of what has happened with our successes over the fiscal year of 2018. A couple of them include, the following successes. In order for the city to increase its ability to receive payment on expenses incurred by property owners during the loss, a new process was created where properties were liened within 1 month of the displacement. And to be certain that the information provided to secure a lien on the land records is accurate, additional controls have been put into place to verify supporting documentation of the cost that was incurred. And currently, for the fiscal year 2018 through April 12th, we've placed a total of 87 liens on land records, with the principal amount totaling $713,979. And of the 87 liens, 17 are open, which means that until the case is closed, we're running a tally, and then once it's closed, we're able to tell the property owner exactly how much they owe the city of Hartford. But because we have the liens on the property, we should be able to get our expenses back, which is a very positive and helpful thing. Also, we've been able to strengthen policies, procedures, and controls within the different departments. And the Office of the Chief Operating Officer collaborated with Corporation Counsel, Human Resources, and Management and Budget to create the posting and job responsibilities, and we also were able to hire a senior administrative analyst in HHS to provide administrative staff assistance and to coordinate complex financial and operational activities. So that is my highlight for relocation.
Faith does many other things in the department, but I wanted to highlight her work. She pulls together a bi-weekly meeting on this issue, and so we stay on top of it and don't misstep in the future. She also puts together the quarterly report that you get on department activities. Sometimes a little difficult to pull teeth to get everyone to give her the information she needs. So this department, through my experience, has spent a lot of time looking at our infrastructure projects, how we fund our capital budget, how we allocate those dollars. We heard before talking about the importance of triaging our infrastructure. We need substantial investment, and we have a small amount of money. So we're working hard to prioritize our capital investments in the center, in the city, to make sure we get the best possible. We're also looking at our ADA requirements. As you know, the Justice Department has us under order to make improvements to our building. We are trying to look at, again, prioritizing those, making the best investments for the best return, the best gain for the municipality. It'll be several years before we'll complete all that work. I've met with the congressman and with our Public Works Department dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers, and met with them to talk about the levees and emphasize to them the fact that there's no way possible we can do everything that we need to do on those levees. And we need the federal government to step up to a project that is important to the nation. So we're going to continue to push those. I have been working directly with the Metropolitan District Commission and meeting with their executive director to talk about where their budget's going, where their investments are going, and some of the assistance that they are giving to the city right now. I've partnered with the Hartford Public Schools in order to help them deal with this issue of capital investment and getting the best possible return out of the small dollars we have to invest. I've met with their facility manager, their assistant superintendent. I met directly with the superintendent multiple times to try to make sure that her educational program and our capital investments fit together. I'm not sure we're there yet, but there's Melissa and I and others are going to go meet with the new CFO and the superintendent to talk about our budget constraints, our capital investments, and her goals within her educational program. So we're going to try to build some better bridges and understanding between the city administration and the school administration. You know, our part of our ADA effort is also got to do with our website, and we have improved our website and are in the process now of adding additional accessibility to our website for those who have more difficult with our systems. I'm going to turn the next piece over to Mr. Jackson, who's going to talk about his efforts.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. All right, so with the Promise Zone, as you all know, we actually don't have a budget. So all of our work is done through our cross-sector partnerships, and we have working groups in 6 different areas. So those working groups are made up of funders, residents appointed by the NRZs, local community-based organizations, city officials, and folks from our faith-based community. And our goal at those tables are to just figure out, number one, how do we bring as many federal dollars in as possible, and how do we best utilize our existing resources and leverage them together. Just trying to break down the silos and come up with different initiatives where we can work together so that those organizations can reach their numbers and reach their outcomes. Up until April, we've brought in a little over $21 million in federal dollars since we've had the Promise Zone designation. And then one big thing that we try to do is not just, when we're working with community members, not just say, what can the city do, but what can we all do individually? So we come up with different initiatives, and we listen to what the community's talking about. And in one place, we talked about, there were homeowners who said, you know, we need help. Our homes are breaking down. We don't have support. And then in other conversations, we had a couple organizations who had dollars, and they were saying, no one's signing up. So what we decided to do was come together and have a homeowners resource fair. We've done it 2 different times, and had over 65 homeowners come in, and they were actually able to have access to those funds. So to date, 10 people applied for some grants where it's lead abatement dollars, healthy homes dollars, and before we had those sessions, 0 applied for them. So it's great for us to be able to continue that. We'll have at least 2 more. So we're in the planning stages of that. Another thing we look to do is, again, try to leverage existing things. At Parker Memorial, we had VITA, so we looked at different partners we had at the table who would provide financial literacy. So we brought them to connect with folks who were getting their taxes done with VITA and provide budget coaching. And then one last thing too, and not one last thing, but one of the other things I just wanted to highlight is connecting with the local NRZs and local organizations. We did some cleanups this year. Really just trying to get community members to be as active as possible, and really taking ownership of what's going on in the community, and also being a part of different initiatives and ideas of where we want North Hartford to be. So My Brother's Keeper, we did have over the past year our 100 Mentors in the 100 Days Challenge. We were able to bring in our 100 mentors, learned a lot from that experience. And we also, right now, this will be the first time that we have the opportunity to have some funds for MBK, because everything we've done thus far has been without dollars. Everyone has been sort of chipping in, doing what they can, again, using existing programs. Well, right now, there's an opportunity to get up to $500,000 with matching funds, and we're in the process of applying for that.
So our general fund is recommended for FY19, $811,006. It's up 0.5%, primarily driven by wage increases in 17-16. That's our presentation. If there are any questions, we'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you so much. Councilman Sanchez.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Van Winkle and staff. Really appreciate the presentation. This first thing I want to say is it's coming from the heart. When we first met, we had a conversation, right? You and I, it was short, sweet. And then we had the budget hearing at Buckley High School. We had another short conversation. It was the waste-to-energy plant. And it really disheartened me, a comment that you said that it was good for the city, the mirror. All right, and that's is one of my tasks, as a councilman here. So when we had the presentation by Mira and Deep and Sassaruni was here, and after Councilman Gale asked his questions, the following Monday you made a comment, and I was relieved to see that you're actually you're seeing the situation that Hartford is going through. And basically, I want to thank you for your comments. I truly do. I really appreciate what you said. I really appreciate that you shared the information that a lot of people out of the city of Hartford don't understand what's going on here. And this is definitely something we need to share with the community, with the region, because if we don't, I don't feel that without their help, you know, it's going to be a long struggle. Long struggle. So thank you for that. So going on to my question, the ad valorem, where do we stand with the ad valorem? Has it increased or has it decreased?
The MDC?
Yes.
Yes. It will continue to go up. The MDC's ad valorem tax has risen for several years now and will continue to go up. Hartford pays more than any other community. And we are having a discussion now. They have hired a consultant to analyze if there should be a change to that ad valorem tax. That study is now out. I've been participating in discussions with that consultant. We have to be careful. Ad valorem tax for water and sewer is a very unusual tax. Most municipalities, communities wouldn't see that. They see just a straight water tax. You pour a gallon of water out of the shower, it goes down the drain, you pay for the water, no ad valorem tax. That means that we would end up shifting the cost of water and sewer to the user, which makes sense if you're a heavy user, but it doesn't necessarily make sense in this city. And so what I've asked them to look at is changing some of the heavy user sewer structure. So instead of someone using more than 250,000 gallons, that we reduce that number to capture the sewer costs for those heavy users and keep it out of the average user's water fee. So we'll see where that goes. That study should be done by midsummer.
So if you may, I would like for you to explain to council really quickly what this means to ad valorem, because ad valorem is not the homeowners. They pay their water bill and sewer bill.
Yes.
And can you explain to them who are we paying for?
Yeah,
and why do we continue paying for it? Because obviously, if we don't pay the ad valorem, it will actually go back to our constituents, and they will suffer the cost.
Mr. Van Winkle, for the sake of time, can we have this offline conversation?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, it was just for the benefit of the council.
And I appreciate that.
Yep.
But I think we've had this continually for a couple budget sessions in a row, so we can all get together to discuss this. You had any other?
No,
question?
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Minority Leader.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and for all of your hard work. You guys work above the 40 hours, for sure. So my question is related to the North Hartford Promise Zone. And what's listed on here in the presentation is, the results for 2018, but wondering if there's quantifiable goals upcoming. And I know that this is, it's difficult when there's been lack of federal funds coming in immediately and the overall situation at that level. But that being said, I asked the question because the community is always asking what's happening with the Hartford, the North End Promise Zone, and so it always comes up.
Definitely, that's a great question. So yes, we do have goals. We're actually in the process of sitting with our working groups and deciding if those goals still make sense. A lot of those goals came in when we put in the application, but now looking at the folks that we have at the table and some of the resources that we have at our disposal, seeing if that's the best use of it. The other piece is typically if you're not involved directly with the program that's receiving federal funds through the Promise Zone, you won't believe that anything's happening. So if you go into the community, you'll probably see a high percentage of people who wouldn't know that something's going on in the Promise Zone. So with that being said, our next big initiative is to do something at Park and Memorial. So there's a brick and mortar section, location where you can go and say that is the Promise Zone at work, so that people can have a look and a feel and really understand what's going on. So looking at Parker being sort of a hub of resources, and not necessarily a place where you'll go to receive resources, but a place where you can go to have access to them.
Thank you.
Councilman Deutsch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, this time, maybe we can do the same thing, but just on one page, which is page 6. If you could, if you'd be able to put up. Right, thank you. In the second bullet, it discusses the shift to pay-as-you-go funding. A side question, maybe you can, I think you've given an opinion, maybe you can share at some point, is whether we feel that the pay-as-you-go funding mechanism will last for 5 years and then may be continued or discontinued in terms of bonding and the role of the MARB, which I know you've been to some meetings at, and so have I.
Yep.
And the big question, I think, for all of us is at what level the MARB will oversee or intervene? Will it be sort of only with the union, the contracts that we mentioned last night? Or will it be also with some other more, let's say, smaller decisions in terms of whether it be the promise zone or some other things, don't necessarily involve, let's say, contracts, but may involve issues of procurement and let's say, representation for women and minorities in construction and so on. To what level do you think we should all anticipate that the MARB will oversee and change any of what we do tonight or next week?
Well, we're meeting with MARB tomorrow, and this is really a discussion for offline also, only because it's a very detailed kind of question. But the MARB is looking at that broader picture. When they look at our budget, they're looking at, are we making the right revenue assumptions? Are we thinking we're getting more revenue than we should get? Have we made the right decisions in that? And they'll look at contracts over $100,000 and comment on them, not say you can't do that, but they do look at union contracts, and there's a process. They can say, no, we're not going to accept that. You need to go back and renegotiate that. But there's a process that comes after that allows it to move forward. We can talk about that offline. But we have chosen to accept this assistance, and I think MARB has been very impressed with the city and very impressed with the information we've given them and how we've addressed the questions that they've raised. So I think MARB looks at Hartford as a city that's got its future in its hands. So I think we're in good shape right there.
All right. Related to that same bullet, let's say that the mayor's budget or city council decided or decided not to fund, let's say, the Minority Construction Council, which has been an issue in the past, I think, which has to do with the fine-tuning of the awarding of contracts and not just the summation.
Yep.
Would the MARB be interested in, let's say, what we all decide for the funding of MCC in terms of fairness in awarding contracts?
They're not at that level of review. Their level of review is up at the top, not at how we operate or fairness or those sorts of things. And that's not what MARB is looking at. They're looking at a balanced budget, a good plan to balance. And again, I believe MARB thinks that the city is in good hands right now.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Going down to the fifth bullet, in regard to MDC, I think in a few words you said some remarkable things about the sewer user fees, and it just occurred to me that if Hartford is paying a payment for use of sewers, and yet, as has been many times pointed out, a lot of the people who live outside of Hartford contribute to those sewers, don't they? I mean, they dump literally into the sewers. And is it the Hartford residents that are paying fees for that sewer usage?
The Hartford residents, through their taxes, are paying that ad valorem fee, yes, through their taxes. Those pipes run under our streets, and when those pipes fail, our streets fail, and the MDC. So
That's the same question.
Yep,
that
it's
Councilman Sanchez asked.
Yeah.
So
it's a bigger question, and I'd be happy to sit down. I've studied this for many months, so.
Well, that's what I mean, very colloquially, for all the crap that comes from people out of town, we're paying in the sewers, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Last on the sixth bullet, 1, 2, 3, partner with the Hartford Public Schools regarding planning for school construction. One of your agencies you're not overseeing, I don't think, is the Hartford Public Library. And you may know we had a go-around last night and discussion of collaboration between the schools and the library on certain institution of or maintenance of community neighborhood libraries, right? So in the planning process, to help with that coordination, would your office be involved for the sake of efficiency as well as community service of libraries available for public use and the economies of scale?
There is money to be saved if we can work together and assist each other in the management, whether it's hiring a human resource person or having one team manage construction for schools and construction for city. There's money to be saved in that. It takes time to build that respect from each party so that you can demonstrate, yes, we're going to do a good job for you. I've done that in the past, and we can do that here.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Jennings.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Van Winkle, for coming in and actually acknowledging what the rest of us are well aware of, and that is that Hartford pays more. Hartford residents are the poorest in the state, but they foot the biggest bill for so many things, and that the state has not paid us our pilot for over 10 years, which means they owe us well over $550 million without penalties and interest. So I think that it would be very helpful if somehow out of your office you could somehow address the disparities so that when we have our legislative package that we can share these with the legislature, because right now they are looking very myopically at the situation and they do not see what we're suffering in terms of payments and carrying their load for all the commuters that come in here as well. So if there's any way we can have something that comes out of your office, I know with Melissa McCall and her office, there's so much that could come out to demonstrate that we are the hub of the region, but we're also carrying the poorest people in the state are footing the bill for some of the richest people in the state that come in to benefit from us. So if there's anything your office can do to come out with some kind of a report or some kind of a video or something, that would be very helpful, and we thank you for seeing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one question. Going back to the consolidation of City and Board of Ed, has there been any projected discussion far as the number of savings that the city is set to be at? 10 million, 5 million, 15 million?
No, we haven't sat down and looked at that number. We're trying to build a relationship, a good working relationship. We're trying to bring expertise to the table so each of us benefit from it. So we know there's savings in that. What the number is, I don't know. 10 million is a good number, but there's savings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Seeing that we have no other business to discuss, we thank you for your time. Thank you to our council staff and to the Management, Budget, and Grants Office, Director Melissa McCall and her team. And just want to let everybody know, the viewing public, that we have our council meeting on May 14th, and then we will recess to reconvene again on May 17th, where the council will deliberate the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 19 at noon. So thank you very much, and we are all dismissed. Have a good night.